everyone, welcome back to another episode here at the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. I'm desperately looking for my glasses because I need all the support on today's day of news that I can get, and this is one form of it. Is it a big news Wednesday? I don't know. It's America. We're gonna sort it out, but we do have a special treat for you. I know it's Wednesday. Normally we have JR. Well, we got him out of the way before. Don't even worry about him anymore. He's fine. He's going on vacation or whatever. We've got Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, how's it going?
What up, Dragon Squad? How you smelling?
Don't want to know. It's a very weird topsy-turvy week. We're basically treating Wednesday like it's Monday. It's fantastic. Maybe it can still be our subs day, but also we will be doing a top 10 list. Francesca,
it's all the days. It's every day and no days in one day. And here we are, and I'm excited, and I'm glad you've got your glasses. I don't understand how that helps you other than to see, which
That's
you feel that seems pretty basic, John. So glad.
It is. No, I don't want to go too in depth, but if I go long enough without it, I start to get headachy, and I can't take that right now. But anyway, we do have a top 10 list, since you're probably wondering, what is it? How do I get access to it? Well, this one is very near and dear to my heart. It's gonna be difficult to get through. It is our top 10 shows that were completely unjustly canceled way earlier than they should have been. And I have some recent examples of that. I have one throwback. So we're gonna be talking about that, and you can get access to it on YouTube by becoming a tier 2 or tier 3 member on YouTube. So if you wanna see those, as well as months of awesome top 10 lists, some about politics, most especially recently not, we will have that for you coming up very soon. With that said, Francesca, how you feeling? You want some news?
Yes.
You wanna just do an audible and just talk about whatever?
An audible?
Audible.com, it's where you can change up your show and get a different one. Anyway.
Oh, it's great. You're shouting out not even a sponsor of this show. Like, just give them free airtime. Do it.
We have a podcast, but they're not a sponsor.
No, it should be. Let's just do some ASMR sounds the whole time. Like,
so we're. Have you watched ASMR? Anyway,
I don't know. That's my biological clock ticking. Okay, let's go. Let's do this.
We're running out of time. Well, I just want to say the news might be disappointing. One person is already disappointed because producer Sophie says, if blank show isn't on your list, I'm leaving the show. And well, it's not gonna be on the list. So I'm not gonna say what it is because I don't want to do spoilers. But anyway, all of that is coming up. So thank you for being here, everybody. We got a lot of news to get to. And along the way, if you want to send us any messages, comments, tweets, super chat, stuff like that, we'll respond as we go. Please hit the like button and share the stream so that people know we're live. At some point, I will browse on over to our Twitter and I'll do that myself. But if you could give me the assist, that would be great. And that said, Francesca, want to do this? Okay, we're not gonna be starting off with light news. So if that's what you're hoping for, we got some later on, I guess. But anyway, let's launch into this. Devastating international breaking news. We found out this morning that at some point in the night, the president of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse, has been assassinated in his home by a group of armed men who also seriously injured his wife, who at least as of when we are filming this is still alive. All of this is coming from a statement and comments made by the country's interim prime minister. So Prime Minister Claude Joseph said a group of people attacked the president's private residence and killed him, calling it an odious, barbaric act, and going on to say every measure is being taken to guarantee the continuity of the state to protect the nation. So that is the statement that was put out initially by the prime minister. Then everything had an extra level of, oh God, what is really going on? When the Miami Herald reported early this morning that, quote, the assailants claimed to be agents with the US Drug Enforcement Administration, according to videos taken by people in the area of the president's home. On the videos, someone with an American accent is heard saying in English over a megaphone, DEA operation, everybody stand down, DEA operation, everybody back up, stand down. Sources said I don't know who these sources are, so just bear that in mind. Said the assailants, one of whom spoke in English with an American accent, were not with the DEA, which I'm not putting any international assassination past the American government, but they don't generally, I think, yell out the name of the agency that they're with. That seems a bit amateurish. That said, I know less about this story than almost any story that we've ever talked about in terms of background knowledge about this particular politician. I understand some of the background of the protests that have been going on, the accusations of corruption, the accusations of fraud in the election that put him in power, them not knowing exactly when his term was gonna end, they're rewriting the Constitution. There's a lot going on, Francesca, but now we have concerns that this might have been some sort of US-backed assassination. I don't know what to think.
Yeah, no, I think it's it's a fascinating and awful story. Obviously, scary for Haitians, scary for Haitians in Haiti, scary for Haitians in the United States. Some of whom have been deported back to Haiti, who have tried to immigrate to the United States, and I think we know that even under President Joe Biden, have been deported back to a volatile and unsafe country. I do want to say, in terms of whether or not it's the United States, of course I don't put it past the US, but it's generally not been the US's MO to guns blaze as of late. Excuse me. MO as of late, I would say in the last 15 years, to do coups like this, right? We're more of the parliamentarian coup, fund the opposition. It might have been the United States might have ultimately backed whomever this is. That being said, there's also other reports that there was Spanish being spoken, right? Not something that is obviously spoken on the island of Haiti itself. And also, again, yeah, the DEA doesn't raid and announce necessarily that they're DEA, and obviously they were not DEA. So one thing I think that is important to keep in mind is the amount of foreign influence the United States has had in Haiti over the years, in terms of propping up people like Jovenel Moïse, who was supposed to leave in February, did not leave, and the United States was perfectly fine with that, right? I think Jovenel was appointed by his predecessor, and that predecessor was appointed or propped up by the United States. So that is one thing to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind, I'm sorry, I know we're gonna dig deeper into this, is that Haiti is an incredibly is a country overrun by drug gangs. And the influence of the drug cartel is huge in Haiti. And it hasn't always been the case, but lately in the last couple decades, that has very much been the case. And so let's never underestimate the amount of power and the amount that the drug war on all sides, right? Whether it's from cartels or from the DEA, how much that influences and terrorizes a population like Haiti.
Yeah, and that might explain maybe why they went with saying they're from the DEA rather than the classic CIA, because of that connection. Well, the joke's on them because our CIA has gotten involved in all sorts of international drug stuff, so that would have worked too. Yeah, so I see people in the chat saying America doesn't assassinate its own puppets. Well, I mean, not always, but you don't have to go back that far to find examples of us taking out our own puppets. Anyway, not saying that that's what's happening. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of dust being kicked up, and I am already feeling like sometimes you get this from the news. God knows what people are gonna be saying about this in 3 hours. God knows by tonight what commonly now accepted by millions of people things will be coming out of this story. It's a disaster, a tragedy. Regardless, I don't know exactly what flavor it is. But many people within one day will be speaking with a great deal of certainty about things that they are very much not certain about. So get ready for that. Now, you did a great job of filling in some of the context there. I want to give people who might not follow Haitian politics or recent Haitian history a little bit of information. So Moïse came to power in 2017 after a lengthy election process that was marred by delays and accusations of fraud. Although he had never held political office before, Moïse was tapped for the post by the country's previous president, Michel Martelly, who stepped down in 2016 without a successor in place. Moïse's time in office has been marked by an increase in political instability, allegations of corruption, and a long-running dispute about when his period in office should end. He had been ruling by decree for more than a year after the country failed to hold legislative elections and wanted to push through controversial constitutional changes. Earlier this year, amid allegations by him that there was a coup attempt that planned to murder him and fresh protests, he moved to protect his position, ordering the arrest of 23 people, including a Supreme Court judge and a senior police official, while declaring he was not a dictator. So he did, in this case, accurately predict his own assassination, although not necessarily having anything to do with the people that he cracked down on while claiming that he was about to be assassinated. So again, that's a thing where there's a lot going on. So anyway, any other thoughts, Francesca?
Yeah, I think it is going to be interesting what the Biden administration says about this assassination, and I think it needs to be careful. And I really wonder whether we're ever going to turn over a new leaf when it comes to U.S. foreign policy in Latin America and in the Caribbean. For example, again, I'm not an expert on Haiti at all, but I do understand that we know the language that is used against countries that dare try and take more ownership or nationalize their resources, such as oil, right? Or their natural resources in any kind of mining or whatnot. Peru recently elected a socialist president, right, who's threatening to raise tariffs on a lot of the mining there. Venezuela, by the United States government, is accused of being undemocratic, et cetera. And I'm not heralding someone like Nicolas Maduro. He has definitely been riddled with a lot of corruption, but I will say that it is interesting that when a country like Haiti or a country like Mexico that has a huge drug cartel, right? Hugely influenced by, or El Salvador, right? Hugely influenced by drug cartels. The United States somehow is completely mum, mostly because they're funneling a lot of money into the police state of those countries, into trying to so-called fight the drug war, i.e. lose the drug war, and propping up people like Moïse in Haiti, even though they are overseeing a failed state, if you will. And I hate that term, but you know what I'm saying. So it's interesting. We have to pay attention to the different ways the United States behaves, whether or not someone is taking control of their own natural resources, or whether they're like low key okay with like cartels running their country and profiting off of the drug war.
Yeah, and it's the most minor of points that you made, but yeah, the failed state thing, sort of like it's very passive. Like it failed. Why? I don't know. Probably some other people. No, it's a broken state. It's been broken by other states. Its back was broken over someone's knee, effectively. Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know what Biden is going to end up saying. I saw a message from Trudeau saying, it's a tragedy. We offer all of our support to the people of Haiti and all that stuff. We'll see what form that comes in. I don't know what the US is going to end up saying. I am assuming there has to be some sort of public statement if it hasn't already come out. Obviously, we're live, so we can't be checking on everything, but we will see. With that, we're gonna take our first break a little bit early today, but when we come back, an early for our show. Meanwhile, in news from around the world coming up after this. Okay, everybody. Whew, this is a day of news. I did want to remind you, by the way, that yesterday we had one of our polls, and the poll was checking in on Rudy Giuliani's effort to crowdfund his legal defense fund, which was not working. So we asked you, how many donors will he have by today? And we're gonna give those results later, but there's still time to vote. If you go to tyt.com/polls, it'll show up and you can vote. We'll see how much faith you all have in America's mayor. That said, though, let's go into some of your comments. I wanted to thank some of you who've become members recently, including Gender VK, who became a tier 3 YouTube member. Very much appreciated. You get access to our monthly live Q&A for that. Catherine Ivy became a tier 2 member, as well as Hild Stensrund, both now getting access to our upcoming later on today top 10 list, top 10 shows that were canceled way too early. So thank you for being members, getting access to that extra stuff. Sean Umpleby, the Steel Dragon, says, Franny! That's it, full message, Franny!
Like Stella, but Franny, I get
basically. Billy Shively, hey Billy, says, it's big news Franny day. I missed your Franny face. I guess that works, it could be any day then. Yeah, that gets a little bit weird. Anyway, okay. Oh geez, non-human humanist is saying his wife died. I heard it on Ben Dixon's show. Geez, well that's why I gave the caveat. You never know with these situations. That is obviously incredibly unfortunate. Jesus. BC Trumpet over in Twitch gifted 5 tier 1 subs. Thank you very much, BC Trumpet. I appreciate that. Diamond Joker gifted 5 as well. How nice of you. Holy Beer Dragon gifted 5 too. What do you know? It's a subs day after all. And Brandy Lou gifted 5 as well. It is quite a day for gifting 5 subs on Twitch. Thank you for that and for making, there was all of a sudden a letter in the preview. Thank you. And making our community a little bit happier. Thank you, Marissa. I appreciate that. Tony Stark subscribed for 14 months.
Ooh.
That's really nice. Then had a very sad message saying Haitian American here. So sad to hear. #free Haiti.
Yes.
Sorry to hear that. Jesus. Kim Sushi subscribed for 13 months. These double-digit numbers are becoming more common. Look at that. Thank you, everybody. The Progressive Carpenter says, I bet it was CIA agents thinking they're playing a joke on their buddies at the DEA. It's all a game to them. Love to Haiti and all Haitians. I'm assuming that's not what it is, but thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. Anyway, Nicole Nowicki says, I think this might have been a holder from yesterday. It says, hi, John and JR. I sent JR a story link on Instagram about our DPD chief, Craig, and his speech he gave last night, basically pledging allegiance to Trump. Hope you can cover it today. I actually hadn't seen that story. I'm not, are you familiar with that, Francesca?
No, I had not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a way to get into Trump's heart. He loves pledges of loyalty. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, running out of time. Nug Huffer subscribed for 4 months. I'm not gonna ask, but thank you, appreciate it.
Why just Huff? Is that was Dabs taken?
I don't know. I'm not as down on the lingo as you apparently are.
Okay.
Sojourns 5 subscribed for 7 months. Thank you, appreciate that. Bernie the Kiwi Dragon says, love from UK. Yesterday was a special progressive news evening, starting with TDR after work, then Indisputable, then Friends' special solo podcast. In time to lull me to sleep, bliss. How nice. Look at that special podcast coming from Francesca.
Ooh,
what if that becomes a more common thing?
Special streaming.
Anyway, we gotta get back. More news after this. Okay, everybody, let's launch into this. I'm assuming we're ready to go, Marissa. I should have asked during the break, but there we go. You know what, actually, before we jump into this, I did want to let you know, as we do every day, very exciting episode of Indisputable coming up right after the damage report today. We go 90 minutes now, and then it's right into Indisputable at youtube.com/indisputable_TYT. Today, the co-host Benjamin Dixon. BC Silver will be a guest, and John Burnett's a conservative who will be appearing on there as well. Should be fun, should be spicy. TYT.com/polls. If you want to vote in the Rudy poll, we'll be giving the results a little bit later on. And with that, let's do this thing. And now that's a kangaroo there. Meanwhile, in Australia, their lockdown has been extended, now entering its 3rd week. This is a serious lockdown. It's kind of like what they pretend lockdowns in the US were like. But anyway, it's going through July 16th, and here's what's going on in Australia. There have been more than 300 COVID infections linked to a limousine driver who tested positive back on June 16th. He is thought to have been infected while transporting, you guessed it, a US flight crew from Sydney Airport. Now, I don't know for sure that they know that that's for sure where it's from, but that's the belief. And last week, almost half of Australia's population was locked down, with cities on the east, west, and north coast tightening pandemic restrictions due to clusters of infections that had developed. Some of those lockdowns were as short as 3 days. Sydney and its surrounding areas are the only part of Australia still in lockdown. And the main reason for this is that only about 9% of Australian adults are fully vaccinated, heightening fears that the Delta variant, or maybe the new Lambda variant, could quickly spread beyond control. So right now they are taking it very seriously. They have been taking it about as seriously, Francesca, as any country in the world throughout this thing. We're gonna give some of those updated numbers in a second, but just a few infections are enough for them to seriously lock down a significant part of the entire country.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if we cared about human life that much. 300 people getting sick. I mean, yeah, and it will, like, it'll be okay. They will be able to control it because they are taking 300 cases seriously. So when the next pandemic rolls around, yes, I said it, we need to look to countries like Australia. But sadly, oh God, we're just gonna have the same debate over and over again about masks and freedom and et cetera. And I do think it is interesting because, I don't think that anyone would say that Australia is China. I don't think Australia is like, in terms of, there's been a narrative which is like, well, if your country is a little bit more totalitarian, your government is a little bit more iron fisted, that you can like, it's bad for democracy, but it's good for like controlling the spread of a disease, right? And a virus. But Australia is kind of proving that that's not the case, that you can still be like, a fine democracy that doesn't have like, certain web pages X'd out that you're not allowed to visit, or like, tracking opposition leaders. And also not give up your like so-called freedom in order for the benefit of the entire nation. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna disagree slightly with one thing that you said there. When you talked about us, in the next pandemic, which now is gonna become a thing, we're gonna have the same debates, sort of, but not exactly the same, because there's not gonna be that first month or 2-month period where right wingers are like looking to their God figures, like how should I respond to this? They're just instantly gonna be opposed to literally anything being done. Like not just I don't want a vaccine, I don't want you to wear a mask. That's what we're instantly gonna have on day one. So that's gonna be fun. Now, there were other ways this could be done. Australia is another example. Australia has been relatively successful in containing clusters throughout the pandemic. That's according to the AP. They've had fewer than 31,000 cases and 910 deaths. And since October, they've recorded one COVID-19 death, an 80-year-old man who died in April after being infected overseas and diagnosed in hotel quarantine. Which isn't even really a case for them then. And by the way, as with any country, it is possible that there are people who've gotten sick, people who've died that aren't being included in these numbers. I certainly can consider that as a possibility, but it is clear that they have been far more successful, even accounting for the smaller population. They've been far more successful. Right now, there are 37 COVID-19 cases in Sydney hospitals. 7 are intensive care, the youngest in their 30s. As a reminder, people in their 30s can get COVID and can get hospitalized by it. But this is them taking it seriously in the absence of vaccines. And they don't have 9% of their population vaccinated because they believe Tucker Carlson. It's not that sort of situation. A lot of countries like the US have bought up the supply. I don't know all of the things influencing vaccine availability in Australia, but it is almost certainly not the same as the US, where the remaining people who don't want to get vaccinated, the last 40% or so, are just choosing not to because they believed something, Naomi whatever said or whatever on Twitter. So they're doing what they can.
Well, I mean, and this is a perfect example, right? Because it's like, like the Bible, doesn't the Bible say something about the last shall be first? Well, guess not in COVID, because if you are, have the lowest number of COVID cases and you do a really, really good job, you don't get vaccines. And that is, something that, while I am very, very grateful that I have been vaccinated and that Americans have access to the vaccine, it is not lost on me that other countries that have done a better job containing the virus are not getting the vaccine. And Australia is a great example. And many, many other countries around the world where they're not poor countries, right? So they're not gonna necessarily qualify for the COVAX program, right? They are not like, but they have done a very good job within their limited resources and limited capabilities to limit the spread of the virus. And there is literally no reward for that. No one is helping them, either develop their own vaccine, give them the, capability to develop the mRNA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's just not on the book. So I can only imagine as an Australian how frustrating that must be, because you don't get a cookie. Your cookie for not spreading the virus is just staying alive. And there's really not an end, and getting access to cookies, and there's not really an end in sight. So I can only imagine just how upsetting that is.
Yeah. So look, we talked yesterday about Marjorie Greene saying literally in a tweet, nobody cares about the Delta variant. Well, that's not true. Some people do, and people who could theoretically die in Australia if they treated science the way Marjorie Greene does. could have died and will not now because Australia is taking it seriously. Whereas in some states, in some areas in the US, COVID is once again on the rise, which means in a few weeks, hospitalizations will be on the rise, which means in a month, deaths will be on the rise. Hopefully not to the extent that they were in past waves. Almost certainly not, because the majority have now been vaccinated. But we are gonna once again have a bunch of deaths that didn't have to happen because we've chosen not to do what other countries have shown works. But meanwhile, in Canada, ocean life is going through a rough patch. And I want to talk about this for two reasons. One, because it's objectively an important story, I think, that says a lot about what's coming in the future thanks to climate change, but also to demonstrate a principle. And we talked about this yesterday on the show. You remember the Gulf of Mexico, how it was like suddenly on fire? In case you missed it, here's some video of that. So that right there is a hot story about hot water, and it's clearly terrible, and we should definitely be talking about it, but it's also exciting and sexy. The water is on fire. But the water just being hot could be even worse, actually, and this is a demonstration of it. So we have a marine biologist at the University of British Columbia talking about the recent heat dome that affected the Pacific Northwest as well as Western Canada. This is Chris Harley, who says that he estimates that last week's record-breaking heat wave in British Columbia may have killed more than 1 billion seashore animals living along the Salish Sea coastline. He says a mussel on the shore in some ways is like a toddler left in a car on a hot day. They are stuck there until the parent comes back, or in this case, the tide comes back in. And there's very little they can do. They're at the mercy of the environment. And on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, during the heat wave, it just got so hot that the mussels, there was nothing they could do. Believes that the wipeout will temporarily affect water quality as well, as mussels and clams help filter the sea. Says that eventually they will recover, but heat waves will happen more frequently and with greater severity due to climate change. So water was certainly heating up in the Gulf Coast, but it was also heating up out there too, which is not good for a lot of different species, clams and mussels, fish, all sorts of things. And all of these have knock-on effects. After they're affected, they affect other things as well. And by the way, it's not just animal species. Marine foundation species like coral reefs, kelp beds, and seagrass meadows depend on cooler temperatures to survive as well. And researchers are going to be planting some sensors so they can investigate what is happening in that area. But preview, not good stuff. These species are made to live in certain temperatures of water, and the oceans are heating up. That's going on right now. That is going to have massive effects on both plant and animal life. And it may not be super sexy. It may not look like something on a Pacific Rim, but it's going on and it could be devastating. Francesca?
I'm just reminded of the part in Alice in Wonderland where the walrus and the carpenter story, how Tweedledee and Tweedledum tell the story, and the walrus eats all the little oysters. And that when you talk about leaving a baby in a hot car and that's what climate change did, I just imagine that walrus and just eating up all those mussels.
You're thinking about awesome cooked seafood. That's what you're thinking about.
I am. You can't put the words cooked and seafood in the same sentence. And for me, also babies in hot cars makes me very. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I don't eat babies. Okay, internet.
You need to be careful. Because we're in QAnon time still.
I don't. I am pro-choice, however, but I don't eat babies. I'm a feminist, but I don't eat babies. No, it's so sad. And it's, look, guys, when BC is this hot, there's a problem. Like when jokes about it being cold in Canada no longer apply, you're like, we're effed. We're totally effed. And obviously the mussels and other sea creatures, kelp, all this stuff, they play hugely important roles to the ecosystem of oceans. And actually, stuff that we can't quantify. And this is the whole point about climate change generally, right? Is that what is the price of a mussel, right? Not like to eat, but like what is the cost of, what does the ocean cost? How much is the ocean? We live in a hyper-capitalist society that does not at all factor in the invaluable importance of the sea, of water, right? And so long as we don't do that, I'm not saying we should do that, but it's the reason that corporations, oil companies can dump whatever toxic sludge, cannot make sure that they're underwater pipelines. Although I would argue, is there anything such as a safe underwater pipeline? But that all of these things, it's the ways that we just use the environment, use our natural habitat as a dumping ground, and then make money in the meantime. And meanwhile, the ocean doesn't have a lawyer, sadly. And these mussels, although they should, they're not lawyered up. And Rudy's offered, but obviously mussels are smart. The oysters know, like they don't want to crook. So yeah, it's interesting. I can't remember. Maybe the chat remembers. Like there was I believe a river in like the Amazon or something where like the river was given basically personhood rights, so i.e. corporate rights, and allowed to like argue and sort of its case in court, obviously through a lawyer, which is kind of the only way to do it, because otherwise we just literally don't value our natural world that we depend on to survive. Okay, I'm done.
Well, I looked it up. The Ganges and Yamuna rivers are now considered legal persons in an effort to combat pollution. It is an implementation of environmental personhood. And I did not know about the rivers. That is interesting. There are others as well. There's a national park in New Zealand that's an environmental legal entity. In the US, probably not making as much progress, but there are others. We need to look into that more. No, and I appreciate a lot of what you just said there. Yeah, we like if we in our production meeting, we talked briefly about an activist who destroyed some oil equipment that's gonna get like 10 years in prison or something. If you destroy that, that's property, you go to jail. If you wreck the ocean, what are you gonna do? Like maybe if it's oil and there's birds and there's cameras, if you have all of those things, then maybe you can get in trouble. But if you just heat it up, if you boil it, if you make it not habitable, that's totally fine. That's a weird stance we've taken.
Like after the Deepwater Horizon explosion and accident and BP's responsibility, what? I know they were made to pay a fraction of money, but they are still in existence. The fact that that money did not liquidate them because of the incredible value of the ocean is a crime, right? Like if you actually put a dollar price on it, there is no way that BP could ever pay the amount that it should have for ruining the Gulf.
Yeah, and what they have to pay. Generally, we know from Exxon, not much. They pay a few politicians, that's what they pay. And then they avoid the legal liability, they get the legislation that they want. That said, there's more going on though. So meanwhile, Iceland did something that let me talk about 4-day work weeks once again. So they ran an experiment to see what a 3-day weekend would be like, what effect it would have on the working class in Iceland, where on average, most employees work 40 hours per week, so they're already doing better than us. And it's illegal to work more than 13 hours a day. That's amazing. When the trial started, the employees worked 40-hour weeks and later shortened it to 35 to 36 hours. Participants said the reduced hours allowed them to focus on exercising and socializing, which enhanced their work performance. So this was a 4-year trial with thousands of participants. So they had a lot of data over a good period of time. And my favorite part of the reporting on this comes from this USA Today article, which says the trial reflected the working population's wishes. When do you ever see that? Just, this is like what the people who do the work want. So we figured we'd do that. That's not how anything works in America. But anyway, as a result of the 4-year trial, researchers found that worker well-being dramatically increased across a range of indicators, from perceived stress and burnout to health and work-life balance. And as a result of it, according to the study, wrapping it up and talking about what has come from this study, which the operating period ended in 2019, they said by the time of this report's publication in June 2021, 86% of Iceland's working population are now on contracts that have either moved them to shorter working hours or give them the right to do so in the future. These trials are therefore an incredible success story of working time reduction, of interest to campaigners and workers worldwide. I hope so, which is why we're covering it. We cover basically any trials like this that go on in different countries, and this was a big one. And it confirms what virtually all of them have said before, Francesca, that you can be just as productive while having a better work-life balance and suffering less stress and other health consequences.
Yeah, but that kind of depression leads to brilliance like Bjork. Okay, tell me that there would have been a 4-day work week Bjork. No, that music is just from the the soul, the tarnished and tormented, overworked, sad societal 9 to 8. Anyway, no, I'm looking forward to Happy Bjork. That's amazing. Obviously, I as a freelancer who will work a lot of one day and then not a lot the next day, fully on board with this. I believe when you have a full-time job, you go into the office 4 hours. That's how much you can be productive for. The rest, jerking off. The rest is nothing. The rest, I mean, not literally jerking off unless you're tubing or whatever, but the rest is just, talking about, the weekend, water cooler. Oh, what are we gonna get for lunch? Beep, 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 beep. And which is great, that's good. But also, why do we need to be here? Why don't we just, 4 hours, put in hard work, and then you take a little nap. And yeah, so I like this. I also think it's so interesting the way that tech companies have tried to innovate the work week and innovate their workers by giving them special buses that takes them to and from their workplace, but then they have to work on the bus. In fact, their work day starts when they get on the bus. Yeah. There's Wi-Fi there, there's whatever. And then, or it's there's nap pods. Why don't you just take a nap in a nap pod? Yeah, why don't I just go home? Why don't you just let me, we get haircuts, we get this, and it's all these perks. And so the way that I feel hyper-capitalism has managed to take care of its own ass is by being oh no, we're gonna give you more little perks. And you're yeah, but the perk of not coming to this place and spending time with my family and going outdoors is way better than anything you could ever offer me. Yeah. So I love this. I think people are way more productive when they have more free time and they're happier. It's not about just productive, happy. Happy equals less mass shooting, because we can't get gun control. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I the fact that you just focused on should we do something to produce more happiness? It sort of sounds weird because we don't talk about that in America. You're not supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be productive. Or maybe we'll zoom out. You're supposed to be successful, not happy really. So is it any wonder that people in a lot of other countries are happier? No, happiness does matter. It has a direct effect both on productivity as well as your quality of life and all that. So yes, I think that we should be pushing for those things. And we've done enough videos about this that nobody watches. That I know what the response is going to be, which is that obviously the people in charge don't want this. They love grinding us down into a gray pace, but also some workers will be opposed to this. Either they'll think that it's too much or whatever because they've been indoctrinated to believe that you should be working constantly, nonstop, or they'll say, but no, not that. No, come on. We need to be worrying about wages or health insurance. And I would say, no, we need to have a vigorous labor movement that can fight on all fronts for all of these things. I think that these can be complementary movements. There's all sorts of abuses. We need to fight against all of them.
Yeah, and I also, there is, in countries that want to stimulate the local economy, they'll give people more time off because they want to stimulate domestic, travel and supporting the local economy. And that works. If you had an extra day off, that might be an extra day that you're supporting a local business. That's an extra day that you're going out to eat or whatever it is, or enjoying a park. I don't know. That there is an economic benefit here, but it's just, again, not quantifiable in the ways that we are used to our BS financial sector quantifying everything.
Exactly, yeah. No, this needs to be part of the conversation. As I say every time we talk about this, we had a movement that worked to give us a weekend. this novel concept. And then we worked for decades and decades and decades and decades, being more and more productive, producing more in raw terms, in profits for corporate overlords. When, if ever, do we get an extra day? How many centuries must we toil? It's up to us to decide, okay? As India Walton said, we are the workers, we do the work. Now we need to do the work to get the time off from our work.
And if you hate socialism, if anyone is out there and they hate socialism or communism, make sure to work through the weekend, because socialists and communists and anarchists gave you that weekend through the American labor movement. So why don't you stick it to the libs and the socialists and work all through that weekend? Oh, also make your kid work in a mine.
Definitely. Okay, with that, we are gonna take another break. When we come back, oh God, the books, they're coming. The revelations are coming too. We've got a rough one for you after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on. Moon Dragon says in the super chat, it was Tucker Carlson getting back at the NSA. Wait, is that the Haiti thing? By the way, I think that's a reference to the pre-show. So we were talking in the pre-show about Tucker's thing about how we need to put cameras on teachers so that we can weed out the ones that are teaching critical race theory. And I just thought it was fun that within like one day he went from the NSA spying on me, how could the government spy, to the government should be spying on every teacher, and then canceling those who say things that are politically incorrect. But his audience is like, yeah, I believe both of those things simultaneously. Anyway, Ray Turner, AKA the Bearded Dragon, says, I sent my first ever tweet just before the show today. It was to wish Anna a happy birthday following your suggestion, Dragon Daddy. Hi, Franny. That's nice. Ray
Happy birthday, nice Anna. Happy birthday, Anna. Yeah, I got a post.
Crab dance. Happy birthday, Anna. Anna does a lot of great work, and just gets attacked constantly, and she sticks with it, which is more than the vast majority of people would be willing to deal with. But she does it, and she does a great job, and I can't imagine this place without her. So happy birthday to Anna. So anybody watching this, send her a nice tweet. I think that she would appreciate your support. Anyway, Liberty and Unity says, keep it up. You keep it up, Liberty and Unity, but thank you. Non-Human Humanist says, hi Franny, I'm glad you mentioned wearing masks indoors. Minimizing risks is cool. I wish other people also would understand probabilities. A low chance doesn't mean zero. A high chance never means 100. Are humans dumb? Yes, actually they are. But yes, it was a good point by Franny. Yeah, we at the gym that I go to, you don't need to wear a mask now. I still wear it. I might occasionally take it off for a moment when my face gets particularly hot, but then I put it back on because I don't know, I like covering up my face, honestly. I'm sort of getting used to that and I don't mind it. But anyway.
It's because you don't want anyone to see like who you are, because you've got like the 5-pound weights and you're like,
It's not the weights that embarrass me, it's that noise that I make while lifting them. Yeah, I don't want to be that guy. Anyway, Franklin Sharpslicer says, I hate you, says, Vendani says, we should be a fascist state. We still say Heil, Raspberry, Heil, Rasp, right into Donnie's face. Thanks, Dragon Danny, and lovely Dragon Fran. If anyone can cheer us up, you can. I don't know what. He's a mad scientist.
Yeah.
Thank you, Franklin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that how you work out? Anyway,
it is how I work out. I go to where all the heavy things are, and I take the lightest thing, and I'm like.
That sounds fun. Okay, let's see. Forbesilla says my job gives an hour lunch. I was very confused. That sounds pretty good. And by the way, don't mention lunch to me right now because I am so hungry right now. You would not believe I didn't eat this morning. That was a bad call. Jim Giddings says 4-hour day, 4-day week, IWW demand in the 1980s. Yes, Francesca. That sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. We should get there. Okay, Cypher Shadow Dragon gifted a tier 1 sub on Twitch. Thank you for that. Zakharov Lopatev said gifted one as well. So thank you for that, Zakharov. Twisted Dragon subscribed for 4 months. Thank you, Twisted Dragon. Says the news is rough but so necessary. Thank you for keeping all of us informed. Very much appreciated, just Dragon. Okay, more news. Hold on to your butts. We got this for you. There are people in the chat talking about waffles because they know how hungry I am. That is very mean of you. Anyway, before we jump back in the news, another reminder, Indisputable is coming up with the amazing Benjamin Dixon, who's gonna be co-hosting with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, so that's exciting. In just a little bit, we're gonna find out how the poll worked out for Rudy Giuliani. We're getting up. We also need to get updated numbers on his actual things, by the way. So go to tyt.com/polls and you can get involved in that. Also wanted to let you know that many of you right now watching live or watching on our members app, or you might be watching on YouTube or on Twitch, thank you for that. But you should also know that while we are like a video first network, we actually started as a radio show, and audio content is still very important to us. So we've started a partnership with Acast so that you can listen to TYT whenever, wherever, and however you want. More details will be coming. For now, reminder, we are a podcast, so on the go, you can definitely see, there's not a lot of details there, but they are coming. That cool teaser image is a taste of things to come for you and for me, because I don't know anything about this, but we're gonna find out together. So isn't that gonna be fun? Now, with that said, I'm gonna try to pretend how incredibly hungry I am as we launch into this next story. There's a book coming out soon. Frankly, We Did Win This Election by Michael Bender. And it is, like all of the books of this variety, giving us a glimpse into something that perhaps we shouldn't glimpse, which is the things that Donald Trump thinks about the world and historical figures. And this one is a doozy. Apparently, on a visit to Europe to mark the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War, Donald Trump insisted to his then chief of staff, John Kelly, well, Hitler did a lot of good things. Okay, that reportedly stunned Kelly. I don't know why, as is being reported in this book by the Wall Street Journal. So it's these early like looks into what's gonna be in the book. So Bender reports that Trump made the remark during an impromptu history lesson in which Kelly, quote, reminded the president which countries were on which side during the conflict, and connected the dots from the First World War to the Second World War and all of Hitler's atrocities. So Donald Trump, who, let's just be clear, doesn't know about any of this, is told, here's what happened in World War I, here's what led to World War II, the development of the Nazi Party and all of that as being one of those things, and then you get all these atrocities. And Trump, the part he wanted to focus on was, hey, why are you only saying the bad stuff about Hitler? He did a lot of good things. So we're gonna have more from this, Francesca, but that's a take. He's playing devil's advocate. He's a contrarian. Aren't those great things?
He's a Nazi. Trump is a Nazi. Stop it, you guys. He's a white supremacist Nazi. We know that. The chat rooms, the 4chans, the 32 chans are gonna be freaking out about this news. Super excited. David Duke's gonna be super excited. From the moment that he did not denounce David Duke for endorsing him and pretended like he didn't know who he was, we have known Trump is a Nazi. His ex-wife said he used to keep a copy of Mein Kampf on the table. He said there were very fine people on both sides of a fascist rally and an anti-fascist rally. Guys, he is a Nazi. This is, and it's like, yeah, now we know. I mean, we've known. How long have we known? But now we truly know. And the idea that he's whatabouting World War II and Hitlerism and Nazism is just like, unless, in what world? Like, is it like, gee, they were really good at synchronizing their hand salutes. Look at the way they goose step in unison. I do wanna know.
You wanna know the negative? I'll give you the negative in 1 second. But before I get to the second negative, I do wanna point out though, there is one definite villain here. Well, there's two definite villains. So one definite villain, let's be clear about this, is Hitler. He's just a bad guy. You don't need to give it to him. The second one is Trump. The third one maybe though is, so how long did you know about this? Yeah. Michael Bender, author of Frankly, We Did Win This Election. Did you know that Trump was praising Hitler before the election? Because That would have been useful. He said this 2 years before the election. Could we have maybe found out about it? Now, I say this is a maybe because I don't know. Maybe Kelly told Bender 3 weeks ago. I have no idea.
No.
But maybe you could point this stuff out when it happens. Not that it would matter because this is America, nobody cares. He could literally just goose step up and down a rally platform and he'd have Tucker Carlson running interference for him. But you could have mentioned this, buddy. Anyway, I know you want to sell a book, but I want to stop fascism. So competing concerns. That said, here's more of what happened. Bender says unnamed sources reported that Kelly, quote, told the president that he was wrong, but Trump was undeterred, emphasizing German economic recovery under Hitler during the 1930s. So that was apparently the good things that he did. So just to be clear, Donald Trump, who thinks that we're too harsh on the Nazis, says that, okay, so maybe you demonize some groups, increase domestic xenophobia, get people into the whole fascism thing, get them to run through the streets, beating and killing people, ransacking buildings and all that. But if that's what it takes to recover the economy, maybe it's worth it. That's probably just a thing that he thinks about Germany in the 1930s. It's probably not a thing that we need to worry about, Francesca.
No, and by the way, for the record, your economy was trash, bro. Okay, you didn't do this. Your head wound Hitler. I've said it before. You'll never be him. And he's in hell. Just like, how dare people compare me to that guy to me? All right. No, here's the thing about all this is like, even if historians looking at World War II, historians looking at the rise of the Third Reich and Nazi Germany, they mostly couch it. The way to couch it is that World War I devastated Germany. It was unnecessarily punitive and potentially created a condition that was economically ripe for a fascist to come into power. Much like in the way you might say that 2+ failed wars in the Middle East, bringing back, loads of soldiers with PTSD, decimating our economy, having our infrastructure start to crumble, our healthcare system go into disarray or sort of not be fixed. That some of that stuff also led to our own head wound Hitler coming into power in 2016. Also a terrible candidacy from Hillary Clinton, but
that too.
That is the way that it is discussed. It's not discussed like, well, he was good actually. Why don't we talk about the good things?
Well, look, to be fair, we have to allow him to respond. Liz Harrington, spokesperson for Trump, says that the conversation being reported is totally false. President Trump never said this. It is made up fake news, probably by a general who was incompetent and was fired. I feel like that was a statement that she did get a little bit from Trump, or she just understands him really well. So he's another one of those people that Trump brought on that was so incompetent that he had to be fired. Trump just had tons of those for some reason in a way that does not in any way reflect negatively on him. So that makes it made up fake news. Okay, and maybe the Washington Post journalists are just making it up based on one source or whatever, kind of doubt it, but maybe. I do want to remind people of a similar bit of history though that did happen. Remember, and this was in 2018 when he was supposed to go to an American cemetery near Paris. I think it was the same trip. So he was reported as he blamed rain for not going to the cemetery, saying that the helicopter couldn't fly and the Secret Service wouldn't drive him there, even though other world leaders who were in Paris at the time did drive to it. So that turned out not to be true. He apparently, according to 4 sources, didn't want to go because he feared his hair would become disheveled in the rain, and because he didn't believe it was important to honor American war dead. In fact, he thought it was kind of important to dishonor them because he said, quote, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." He said the 18 Marines who lost their lives at a recent battlefield were suckers for getting killed. Now, all of this is not a direct quote. These are multiple sources saying he said that. And the same trip where he apparently said, you kind of gotta give it to this Hitler guy. So maybe all of these sources are making up everything. Maybe that's possible, or maybe it's consistent with virtually everything else we know about him, up to and including his bedtime reading material.
Every single news outlet needs to ask Republicans, about this? What do they believe? Do they think that Trump was right and that Hitler had good qualities? Put the microphone in their face and have them answer it, okay? Because this party has been greasing the wheels of like a new neo-Nazism, and they continue to do it. Continue to do it. There were people in the Capitol riots wearing Holocaust denial shirts, right? How much more to me? Every single day. I don't want to hear jack about bipartisanship. I don't want to hear jack about a policy. I don't want to hear anything about your little gang of whomever. No, you ask them about this. You ask them whether or not they condone and support Trump's comments on Nazism, whether they condone and support all of the people who love him, and by association love what the Republican Party's become.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because coming up, we're in just a couple of minutes, we're gonna have to take our break for the end of the hour. But when we come back, we're gonna have an individual who just very recently has condemned his past condemning of Donald Trump just in time for the Hitler news. So that's a fun one. So we're gonna have that in a little bit. But before we get to that, I did want to, before we end the linear show, I want to let you know the results of the poll. So yesterday we covered Rudy Giuliani, who is looking to crowdfund his legal defense. I have some empathy for him. A lot of Americans get left behind and put in a position where they have to crowdfund their own medical treatments and that sort of thing. That said, it was kind of funny that he was looking for $5 million. And at that point, he had raised $9,590 from literally 100 people. He's America's mayor. He was a candidate for president and he has 100 donors. So anyway, we asked you, how many donors will he get by tomorrow morning? And 100, so the same number, got 33.77% of the vote. So a lot of faith in that. Slightly more, 38%. The winning bid here believed he would have 105, so about 5 extra donors. Just 12% of you thought he would get 50% more, 50 more. And about 16% believed he could get all the way up to 250. Now, I would love to tell you exactly how many he got, but unfortunately, since this has been talked about so much, you can no longer get to the individual page for his crowdfunding campaign. It's just listed in like a little thing that doesn't say how many donors with a bunch of others. So I can't say for sure, but I can say that he had been at 9,590. He's now at 9,799. So he has made $209 since then. So I'm gonna give it to the 105. I think he's gotten about 5 more donors since then, maybe 10, but this isn't Price is Right rules. So the 105 wins. Thank you to everybody who took part in the poll there. Wow, Rudy, you did so much, and for this. Anyway, I want to thank, that'll cover 15 minutes of legal fees. Blue Lizard Gut says, I don't think it will, honestly. Anyway, thank you to our linear audience. For those of you who are watching the members app on Twitch and on YouTube, we have a lot more, including Cori Bush, who has been targeted by multiple members of the right for her very accurate July 4th comments, as well as a ton of other news, which is gonna be coming up in just a little bit. So we're gonna take a short break, but we're gonna have more for you right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to the Damage Report. Short little break there, but we're very glad that you're still with us, whether you're on YouTube or on Twitch. Thank you for being here. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Everybody, let's see how high we can get that thing. And with that, Francesca, you still ready for more news?
I am here.
Okay, well, you wanted someone who is going to have to come to grips with defending Trump despite these comments, and I've got one for you. Let's do this. JD Vance is an author and now candidate for the Senate, running for the seat that's being vacated by Rob Portman, Republican in Ohio. And he's got a bit of a problem. He's very loyal to Donald Trump, loves Donald Trump, but not that many years ago, he was a little bit critical of Donald Trump. And the thing is, you're not allowed to do that. So recently, he had to go on Fox News and denounce himself for having denounced Donald Trump, saying, like a lot of people, I criticized Trump back in 2016. And I ask folks not to judge me based on what I said in 2016, because I've been very open that I did say those critical things and I regret them. And I regret being wrong about the guy. I think he was a good president. I think he made a lot of good decisions for people. And I think he took a lot of flack. So look, having to denounce yourself for criticizing someone because now you have to be loyal to this person to have any chance is sad on its own. But you need to understand that there are multiple additional levels of sadness. So there, he claimed, I've been very open that I did say those critical things. Why is he having this interview? He's having it because a report, K-File on Twitter, noticed that he had deleted a bunch of tweets that were critical of Trump. Right. He was not being open about his criticism. He was trying to scrub it from the internet and he got caught. So now he's having to do this thing. But I want to give you a little bit more of what he said, and then we're going to tell you what the criticisms were. So he finished saying to Fox News' Alicia Acuna, I think the most important thing is not what you said 5 years ago, but whether you're willing to stand up and take the heat and take the hits for actually defending the interests of the American people. Okay, so he was wrong about Trump. Trump's been great. He denounces himself. What were his actual criticisms that he is now in hindsight so wrong about? So here is what JD Vance said back in 2016. He said, Trump makes people I care about afraid, immigrants, Muslims, etc. Because of this, I find him reprehensible. God wants better of us. And that was actually kind of a trend in his criticisms. It was this appealing to Christianity. He said, fellow Christians, everyone is watching us when we apologize for this man. Lord, help us. I believe that was on the day of the Access Hollywood tape. And JD Vance there was responding the way one would expect a Christian would to the things that Trump had said. So there are other criticisms and we'll get to them, but he is denouncing his own, I think, holding to honest Christian expectations for politicians. Now he has to turn his back on his previous Christian self because he needs Donald Trump to support him, Francesca.
No, it's not. The reason he's turning his back on his own self and his statements that he made is because his star is rising, because he's becoming more of a celebrity, because his hillbilly elegy had Amy Adams in it and it was a trash movie. I'm just gonna say it was bad. All right, now that his star is rising, he knows that he's got a whole new captive audience that he needs to pander to, and he's being whipped by, and that includes, oh yeah, no, Christianity totally means discriminating against a certain group of people and locking kids in cages, and then yeah, that's not my Christianity. No, that's not Christianity anymore, right? And I think it's even more cowardly because, and you're gonna see this more and more as people think and feel that Trump is fading from relevance, they are gonna try and step into his glory and trying to again captivate and capture his audience, but they denounced him back then. And now they're like, oh, but now the coast is clear because he's out of office. I'm comfortable being in the opposition. I want all this right-wing shine. It's my turn. So
I'd love to see it.
So clear.
I'd love to see it. We'll see. Maybe it'll be DeSantis eventually. Maybe it'll be Marjorie Greene. But right now, I don't know. And by the way, so I want to read let's go to this last graphic of what he said. So he said, in 4 years, I hope people remember that it was those of us who empathized with Trump's voters who fought him most aggressively. Okay, well, it's been 5 years. I wish you would remember that, JD Vance, because you believed you were doing something moral, something just, following your values. But now what you value is political power and influence and a nice fat paycheck. And to get that, you need to flip off all that Christian stuff you were pretending to care about back then to pretend that Donald Trump, like you were right then. He was a threat to immigrants and to Muslims. You were right. And this is the bizarre thing. When you worship an evil God, you have to denounce yourself for your own right things. The whole world gets turned upside down. And that's what you need to do to become a politician on the right now. It's gonna be sort of the theme of the rest of today's show.
That's exactly right. It's amazing. It's amazing how he told on his future self with that tweet. It was essentially, hey, hold me accountable in the future. We should all be held accountable. And my first reaction to this story was, well, what did Trump do that he liked? Literally nothing. He just made good on all of the different groups of people that he had been demonizing on the campaign trail. He made good on actually hurting them, legislating against them, making it harder for them to access rights. He just made good on all of his horrible promises. Oh, JD Vance changed. Oh, JD Vance is trying to run for office. Oh, JD Vance's star is rising. That's who changed. Trump didn't change.
Exactly. Okay, well, look, there's gonna be a lot more just awful people coming up. So hold on to your butts. It's coming. But we got one good person, so let's start there. On the 4th of July, Cori Bush had, I think, just a very accurate, little honest thing to say about America and what it means to some people on the 4th. It's not just a time to set off a bunch of fireworks. She said, when they say that the 4th of July is about American freedom, remember this: the freedom they're referring to is for white people. This land is stolen land and black people still aren't free. So what she's expressing there, I think that a lot of people probably feel some version of that, and that can't be allowed. She can't have a different perspective on the 4th or what it means, how people should approach America or their historic or current relationship with our government. And so she has been attacked viciously ever since then. So we are going to give you quotes from Tucker Carlson. I could not make you watch video of him today, so I'm just gonna read it. But here is what he had to say. This guy, this incredibly wealthy individual who has an audience of millions, said, Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush, for example, someone who could never have a job in the real world because she's not smart enough for a real job, complained that her taxpayer-funded gig is really a form of slavery.
What?
So because this Black woman doesn't think about America the same way as him, she's too stupid to have a job. She of course did, she's a nurse, which I'm not a nurse. I don't think I could be a nurse because it does require quite a bit of intelligence and training and all of that. Seems kind of beside the point, but no, she doesn't agree with him, so she's not smart enough for a real job. He goes on to say, Cori Bush, however, is free to say stupid things on Twitter as much as she wants and draw a federal paycheck and draw lifetime benefits for her wrecking the country that she hates. So he gives no examples of how Cori Bush has wrecked the country. Her having a different opinion doesn't mean that she hates it any more than, as we point out so often, believing that America needs to be made great again isn't proof that you hate it. Again, they're fine with hating the current state of America for some people, but not for others. It's weird how it breaks down so clearly on racial lines. But what I love about this is the constant, she makes too much money. She's getting federal paychecks. She's getting federal benefits and all that. You shouldn't listen to her because she's a dumb Black woman who's getting money that she doesn't deserve. And you should listen to me, a guy who was born into fantastic wealth and is now paid millions of dollars to tell you this BS. She's an elitist. But I, an incredibly wealthy member of the 1%, who could have failed every day of my life and never been anything other than fantastically wealthy, I'm on your side. This is right-wing populism. Isn't it awesome? But anyway, there's more. But Francesca, what do you think about this?
I mean, you're absolutely right. It is the highest form of projection to hear Tucker Carlson call someone else unqualified for a job in the real world. And you said it, I'm gonna say it again. She's been a healthcare worker. She's been a teacher. She has done work unpaid for organizing for Black lives. Like, she's held many jobs. Oh yeah, by the way, single mom. There's also, doing the work of raising a kid. Also a job that Tucker Carlson, my God, does he have children? Are there more Carlsons?
Probably.
Somebody check that. Are they being cared for?
It would be worse if there are, so yes, there are.
It is, and you bet your ass that he's not helping take care of them, but which means they might turn out okay. But like it is exactly that. And his whole thing, like complaining that her job is a form of slavery. She didn't say that. That's not what she said. Nope. She's basically echoing the words of Frederick Douglass and is saying that even however many years later, Black people are still not free in this country, and that we have to remember that we're on stolen land. Now, what is so annoying about July 4th is that we have to just sort of like nod our heads and go along with America's great, yay, happy birthday, and that criticizing our country, working for a better country, getting elected to office, the work that it takes, and then trying to make this country a better place, that somehow that is not patriotic. And I call BS on that. We all know that it is the highest form of patriotism to try and work for real change in a country that you call home.
Exactly. We had a little bit more from Tucker Carlson, but I can't. That's enough of him. I think that's enough. So we're gonna move on to someone else who's awful, but at least they're not Tucker Carlson. They have that. That should be in their Twitter bio, actually. I'm terrible, but at least I'm not Tucker Carlson. As we move on to this, Cori Bush's commentary on the 4th of July drew criticism from Jesse Waters as well, who had a really interesting historical take. Take a look at this.
Congresswoman Bush said two things that really dumb things. She says this land was stolen. This land wasn't stolen. We won this land on the battlefield and we bought it, right? We purchased Spain. We purchased Florida from Spain. We have the receipts. What do you want to give Florida back to Spain?
How about the Seminoles?
Spain probably wouldn't take it.
But
what about them, Geraldo? We won that territory on the battlefield. It was an ugly, brutal battle, but we won it. We're not just going to give everything back to the indigenous people of this country. That's just no civilization. What do the Moors come into Spain and conquer them for 800 years? Dead people just, let's just give it back to Spain.
Like he sits in front of a camera on a stage and he has a suit on, so you think, oh, he's probably marginally intelligent. No, he's not at all, Francesca. Well, what do you think about that argument? It wasn't stolen. They just killed people and took it, or bought it from people who presumably were always there. I think that the Spanish have controlled it for 10,000 years, so that makes sense to me. What do you think, Francesca?
Honestly, I just think it's amazing that no other co-host like leaps across the table to strangle Jesse Waters. Mostly just because it would be satisfying, but also because he's stupid. And you know who's got receipts? Let's see. You know who's got receipts when it comes to the American the colonization of the Americas? Native Americans have receipts. They're called treaties, and almost 400 of them have been broken in our nation's history. So they got the receipts that said, yeah, you can have this land, you can't have all the land. We keep this land. And no, those were destroyed, right? And you don't win by conquest, man. Like you negotiated. They let you stay here. And then you violated their trust.
Yeah, that is an amazing and devastating point. That is either beyond his actual knowledge about any of this, certainly beyond his interest. He's not interested in any of that. I do want to add a point though that was made by Marcy GTR on Twitch, who says a lot of we talk, but when you bring up slave owners, that wasn't them, which is a great point. We won it in these battles. That was us. And then there was a period with slavery where, hey, that doesn't have anything to do with me. That wasn't my family. How dare you say? And then it's we again at some point. Isn't that weird how that works out? What's we? But anyway, she says it was stolen. And he says, no, it wasn't stolen. We killed people and took it. Well, she didn't mean that you shoplifted it. She didn't mean that you snuck it into a movie theater or something. That's not what stolen means. She mean you killed people and took it, which she says is not acceptable. Now you're pretending that it is, let's do a more recent example. So the McCloskeys were worried that Black Lives Matter were coming for their house. Now they weren't. They were never under any danger. But according to Jesse Waters, if Black Lives Matter had stormed that house, had murdered the McCloskeys, and then refused to leave, it wasn't stolen. They won it in battle. It was hard fought, but it was won. No, they don't actually believe this. This is just such ahistorical BS. Yeah. She's saying that because of the legacy of bloodshed, like look at Hawaii, man, if you want an example of it, all of this, that we need to understand that the way it has affected different communities in different areas of the country ever since then, and perhaps do something now to right historic wrongs. His job is to pretend that the wrongs were actually rights, that all of these incredibly evil things that we would never stand for now were actually great moments in history. That's what he's there to do. He doesn't understand the history, but he understands his role in maintaining the system right now.
And here's the other thing, like what's amazing about someone like Cori Bush is that she hasn't given up on this country, right? Why would she run for office? Why would she do her job day in and day out if she looked back on our awful history of colonialism and genocide and slavery and say, well, this country's doomed? That's not the line of the squad. That's not the line of progressives. We don't look back and say, well, because we've been terrible, this country will always be terrible. No, instead she's saying, I'm gonna work to make sure this country lives up to the good parts of the Declaration of Independence and the good parts of our Constitution. I'm gonna make sure that we make a more perfect union, right? Like, and that is very fundamentally different than the militias storming the Capitol building trying to overturn a democratic election. That is fundamentally different than militias and crazies training against Sharia law in the backwoods of Idaho. All right? These are people highly invested in the political process, highly invested in doing the work. They're not sitting in a studio whining all day long. So who's actually more American? Who's actually working for real change? It's Cori Bush.
No, she's entitled. She's got a paycheck. Jesus. Okay. Before I do this, I'm gonna do two things. One, I'm gonna read a couple messages, give you a little bit of buffer, get the taste out of your mouth from Jesse Waters and Tucker Carlson. Two, I'm gonna warn you that it's about to get worse. I apologize. You would think that I disliked our audience because of the things I inflict on them. I apologize in advance, people, but it's too much. Let me read a couple of comments and then I'm gonna do this to you. In the member comments, Marco Antonio says, plenty of oil in hell maybe, the US should invade hell. Don't think that we wouldn't do it. And I believe that's actually the plot of the Doom series. Douglas Greenberg says, sociopathy is considered an externality for businesses. I think that's referring to the BC thing and the destruction of the oceans. But let's see, Phyllis Masters upgraded their membership to tier 2. Thank you, Phyllis. You get access to our top 10 list. I'm very excited to do the top 10 shows that were canceled way too soon. That's gonna be fun, not about politics, we could use it. Hey, weird timing here. Franklin Sharpslicer sent in a super chat saying, a fun thing about racist Marjorie Greene, and said with some grace, every time she makes a call, Japan is nuzzling her face, not to mention also her favorite toy, her O's were from the Orient. Oh boy, I don't know that I wanna know what you're saying there, Franklin, but thank you for the super chat. I'm gonna move on anyway. Bernie the Kiwi Dragon says some schools in Hong Kong now have cameras in classrooms to make sure no subversion is taught. It sounds exactly like what Tucker Carlson wants. Is Biden too friendly with Beijing? Worry about Tucker wanting to be Beijing. Yeah, if you want teachers to be filmed constantly, also cameras on kids all day long. Yeah, which side are you on? Forrest Dudley says Trump, there were very fine people on both sides of World War II. Kind of what he's saying there. Anyway, Blue Heart subscribed for, oh my God, on Twitch. I've never seen this. 15 months. Damn, Blue Heart. Says these are legitimately the types of crises Captain America warned us about in the 90s. The villains from the show are actually in charge of the corporations in real life today. Yeah, but Captain America shouldn't be political, I heard on Newsmax yesterday. Anyway, thank you for that. Okay, with that, we don't have much time, so let's launch into this last topic again. Apologies in advance. Just a couple of weeks ago, Marjorie Greene got in actual trouble. I don't mean from like people like me criticizing. I mean, even Kevin McCarthy and some Republicans said that her commentary that people who are opposed to the vaccine are effectively like Jews being hunted down in the Holocaust was too much. You can't say that. You can't talk about yellow stars and all that. But it's okay. She learned, she went to the Holocaust Museum. She said, she's not gonna make comparisons like that anymore. And then come to today, where she tweeted this: Biden pushing a vaccine that is not FDA approved shows COVID is a political tool used to control people. People have a choice. They don't need your medical brown shirts showing up at their door ordering vaccinations. You can't force people to be part of the human experiment.
God, you sound just like her. I really can't get over, I can't do a better impression. It's like the low is low and it's that exact cadence.
That was pretty good, actually. Unfortunately, what she said wasn't good, because the brown shirts, of course, were a paramilitary organization that helped Hitler and the Nazis get into power. So the brown shirts hunted down and killed people, among them Jewish Germans, destroyed businesses and all of that. They were one of the armed wings of the uprising that led to the Nazis. And she says, if you don't want a vaccine, the medical brown shirts are coming to your door. So once again, you're the Jews in the Holocaust. Didn't we go through this? This is you can say almost anything. You can say Nancy Pelosi should be shot. You can say that there's space lasers and all that. The only thing you learned not to say was we're the Jews in the Holocaust. And it lasted a week and a half until you started claiming it again. And this time, will there be pushback, Francesca? Will Kevin McCarthy be aggrieved by this?
No, she took the Holocaust Museum tour so she could get more anecdotes and analogies to compare vaccines with the Holocaust. That's literally all she just learned that the brown shirts were a thing. And she was like, oh, okay, so the brown shirts, all right, so I'm gonna do that. She's just figuring out more ways to make this brash and awful and offensive comparison. And we all knew when she made her statement, it's wrong to make these comparisons. We heard the narrator voice. When she's like, I will not make any more comparisons, the narrator she did not stop it making comparisons. She did not stop, and she will not stop. Marjorie will never stop.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Here is what she said. The Holocaust is, there's nothing it's comparable, but there's nothing comparable to it. It happened, and over 6 million Jewish people were murdered. There is no comparison to the Holocaust, and there are words that I've said, remarks that I've made that I know are offensive, and for that I want to apologize. And maybe I can apologize for the next ones too, because they come in a couple of weeks. And here's the thing, is it kind of fun? Yes, the news is terrible, so I'm laughing as the defense mechanism that I have. But this is a congresswoman. She may not have committee assignments or whatever. She's still a congresswoman, and she is still 100% minimizing those who were murdered by the Nazis to make her anti-scientific, anti-vax position seem more honorable or something. She's been told, she had her opportunity to learn. You shouldn't have needed it, but she had it anyway. And what she has learned is, I can still get away with whatever I want. So screw all those people, screw the people who are still dealing with the long legacy of the Holocaust and all the tragedy and horror and all that. Screw all of them. I'm gonna use it to justify my own BS.
Okay, yeah.
Final thoughts.
Yeah, two last things. One, it doesn't even come close. If you're talking about a genocide in another country, if we're talking, I'm sorry. Are there brigades coming to anyone's home? Has anyone actually been asked to show a vax card? I haven't. I've flown on a plane. I've done comedy indoors. I've gone to restaurants. Never been asked.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad? Who knows? I've never been asked. So there's no one knocking at the door. There is no one checking. I actually, in a lot of cases, especially when I go into a bar and it's they're like, oh yeah, let's check your ID. Make sure you're 21. Make sure you're legal enough to spread the virus.
Yeah. It doesn't actually exist.
Who is checking?
Unfortunately, yeah, it doesn't actually exist. We're unfortunately out of time, Francesca, but thank you so much for joining us for Big News Wednesdays. Really appreciate it. Everyone check out the Bitchuation room, might be becoming a little bit more common. We'll have to see about that. Yes. But thank you very much, Francesca. Always glad to have you on. Everybody, I will be joining Anna Kasparian on the second hour of the Young Turks, the birthday girl Anna Kasparian. So everyone should definitely check that out. And coming up in just a few minutes is Indisputable. Go to youtube.com/indisputable_TYT to watch Dr. Rashad Ritchie. And it's gonna be awesome. Ben Dixon's gonna be on there. But until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.
You know what it is. Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Rashad Ritchie. We got a whole lot of show today. On the program, my big homie, Benjamin Dixon, progressive activist and host of the Benjamin Dixon Show, will join me today on the program. Also, we have conservative John Burnett. John is a NYU adjunct professor, also managing director of One Empire Group and political strategist. We're gonna break down some topics for debate. You don't wanna miss it. I always enjoy debating other professors. My top news for the day. Let's get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard members of the Trumpite crew say that nobody from the Trump regime or no Trump supporter actually committed acts of terrorism on January 6th. This has now become an adopted narrative by those on the right. It used to be the far right. Now it's an adopted narrative by those on the right. You have members of Congress even subscribing to this narrative that no, Trump supporters did not actually storm the Capitol, but in fact, Antifa. It was Antifa who did this according to their narrative. Let me remind you of what was said initially. Here it is.
And the mob that attacked the U.S. Capitol building Wednesday, killing a police officer, appears to have been overwhelmingly composed of supporters of President Trump. But in right-wing online circles, rumors are swirling that the destruction was caused by Antifa, far-left-leaning anti-fascist militant groups who claim to resist neo-Nazis and white supremacists at demonstrations. However, there's no evidence so far that that took place Wednesday.
Whoa, wait a minute. I actually have some evidence of a fake Antifa member who has been arrested by the FBI, who because of an affidavit, we know that this person dressed as if he was actually a member of Antifa. So there's a man who has been arrested. This is quite interesting. A Virginia man arrested in connection with the Capitol riots, dressed in all black on January 6th so that he would look like an Antifa member, according to an FBI affidavit. Now this guy's name, and I hope I'm not slaughtering the name, is Phi Dong. Let's put up one of the pictures that we have. He's one of more than 520 people charged so far in relation to the riot, dozens of whom have been linked to far-right groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. He has been charged with disorderly conduct, obstruction of an official proceeding, and knowingly entering a restricted building without lawful authority. But here's the other part of this narrative that's very important to understand. This individual who decided to dress like he was a member of Antifa to promote a false narrative reminds me of something. You know what this reminds me of? Let's go back to what has been deemed historically as the Boston Tea Party. Now, we all know it was not a party whatsoever. It was actually a riot. Property was destroyed, violence took place, and theft took place. Now, because the men who did this act of terrorism, because they were in fact white men, they are listed as patriots in our history books in the United States of America. But they did in fact destroy property. They did in fact challenge and change commerce. They did in fact interrupt the business flow of that day. Now, some would say they were justified in doing so, and that's a different argument and debate. I'm willing to have that debate any day. But let's be very clear. They dressed as Native Americans during the Boston Tea Party riot in order to do their deeds, in order to enact their violence. Well, very similarly, that is what happened here. Now, here's what else took place. He also told an undercover FBI agent that he conducted surveillance efforts on the Capitol a month after the riot took place and was part of a militia group for which the agent attended meetings. Here's why that's important. It doesn't stop with January 6th. So those of you who may say we don't need a January 6th committee or we don't need to investigate this further, let me tell you why that's a mistake. Those individuals are connected to various groups in this country. They are in fact domestic terrorists. Terrorism is not a moment, it's not an event, it's an ideology. They still hold the ideology of someone who wants to rip the country apart by way of criminality and violence. That still exists. This individual does not exist by himself. He's connected to an organization, to a movement hell-bent on destruction of our democracy. To talk more about this, I got my big homie, Benjamin Dixon. Thank you, brother, for being on Indisputable.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always a pleasure.
Once again, the narrative is completely opposite of what they've been saying. They have been telling us that there are Antifa members or were Antifa members who attacked the US Capitol. But in fact, these were Trump supporters. These were militia supporters who tried to mimic Antifa to carry out their criminal activity.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things that we have to remind the people of is that Antifa is not an organization along the lines of Proud Boys. It's not an organization. There's no chapters. There's no hierarchy. There's no president of Antifa. But it's this ubiquitous boogeyman. It is what Republicans use this week, because next week it'll be a new boogeyman, like, it'll eventually be the war on Christmas boogeyman. But Republicans are really adept at using a centralized figure for everyone to be afraid of. And in this case, it's Antifa. And that gentleman knew that if he dressed up as such, that he would help weave into the national narrative that this wasn't Donald Trump supporters doing this, but this was actually Antifa, when we all know better.
Don't you find it quite fascinating, the level of strategy they are willing to employ, even in the middle of what seems to be chaos? And this is why it's important to pay attention to moves like this, because it talks or highlights a sophistication connected to what they're trying to do. They are perfectly willing to do a criminal act and intentionally blame another party for doing it. Number one, you're telling me you're not a true believer in what you're doing. Number one, you're not a true believer. Number two, you're a coward, because you would rather hide behind your sheet de facto, you rather hide behind your hood de facto than to be proud of what you actually believe in. Now, I completely disagree with these guys in methodology and also in policy, but damn, to dress up as someone who's adversarial to your cause, to create a false narrative about who was involved. And you're right, brother. Antifa is just one of those branding mechanisms utilized by the right in order to clump everybody in to what they want to be the bad person.
Exactly right, and this is how they get away with it. They're Republicans. They in this conversation. Republicans have become masters and have been masters of propaganda, half-truths, distortions, and yellow journalism. And they understand the power of a talking point. And they also understand if they just keep saying Antifa long enough, then they will have Republican supporters willing and who believe in it enough to die for it or to march up the steps of the Capitol pretending to be Antifa in order to vilify something, watch this, Dr. Richie, that doesn't even exist.
Right.
Antifa doesn't exist, but this man believed in it so much that he marched up the steps dressed as one.
The biggest criticism, one of the biggest criticisms I have of Democrats is their inability to message properly. They are actually on the right side. Progressives, left-leaning individuals, even corporate Democrats on occasion, are actually on the right side of the historical narrative and the progress narrative. When you look at popularized programs that we have adopted as normative in the United States of America, those are Democrats that came up with those ideas. Those were progressives of that era who pushed that legislation that everybody, Democrats and Republicans, benefit from today. And you would be hard pressed to try to rip some of these programs away from Americans today, but they were in fact progressive policies of that era. So how is it that the majority of Americans are with Democrats as it relates to a woman's right to choose? The majority of Americans are with Democrats as it relates to funding or increased funding for K through 12 education. The majority of Americans are for police reform, criminal justice reform. You can just go down the list, brother. But somehow Republicans have been more successful at branding their message to the American public than Democrats have been.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what it is. It's the ability to brand. It's the ability to package it up into a talking point. And I think that is something that they have mastered and something that Democrats sorely need to learn.
Yeah, let me shift gears because this was quite astounding. These people, and I gotta say it, these people. So you're looking at Kelly McEnany, whatever the hell her name is. She's a liar. She's a liar who served as the White House press secretary under former President Donald Trump. She lied about slavery. Now, damn it, we know you had to lie for Trump. We know you got a paycheck to lie for Donald Trump. Okay, we kind of almost get that. You sold your soul, yes. But we understand there was a paycheck behind it. We understand that you were a sellout. But literally, you don't have to lie about slavery. So this individual who was part of an all-white panel on Fox News. And first of all, do we have to say all white when we talk about Fox News? Okay. So this all-white panel on Fox News, they decided to discuss Representative Cori Bush's July 4th tweet. And here's a bit of how she introduced the segment.
The White House briefing set to start any minute now as we await reaction to the verbal fireworks over 4th of July. After some Democrats, left-wing activists, and even the news media smeared the all-American holiday with claims of racism. Squad member Cori Bush blasting Independence Day, tweeting, quote, "When they say that the 4th of July is about American freedom, remember this, the freedom they're referring to is for white people," while NPR took issue with the Declaration of Independence, calling it, quote, "a document with flaws and deeply ingrained hypocrisies." All this bashing leading to the New York Post front cover page, which read "Red, White, and Woke," with its editorial board asking, quote, "Why do liberals in the media take such joy in trashing America?" The haters never take a day off from hating, that is clear. And they never take a day off of getting the facts wrong. We know most of our forefathers, all of our main founding fathers were against slavery, recognized the evils of it. There's a great piece to that end on Heritage called 1776, not 1619. But I'll leave it to you. You know, they're so wrong on so much. Where to begin?
My grandmother would have said, use a damn lie. Now, no, the founding fathers were for slavery. George Washington enslaved hundreds of men, women, and children. Thomas Jefferson enslaved over 600 people, including Sally Hemings. James Madison enslaved over 100 people. James Monroe as many as 250 people. Here's another not so fun or convenient fact for white supremacy ideology. The majority of the signers of the Declaration of Independence owned slaves, 41 out of 56 according to one study. Let me get my red dot graphic here. You see those red dots? Those red dots represent the people who are part of the foundation of this country, who actually owned slaves. They were slave holders, slave owners. There's much history about this. This has been documented, well documented, documented again. But then she says this ridiculous thing on what's considered to be a major news network, and not one person challenges her false narrative because it fits their ideological narrative of white supremacy. We don't need to blame America for racism, that somehow the founding fathers were pure at heart. And Ben, I gotta ask this, brother. Don't you find it quite insane that the same people today who are supportive of the writers of the Constitution, signers of the Declaration, etc., they will say things like America is a Christian nation, but it's not. It is not a Christian nation. As a matter of fact, the people who were the architects of this country literally were fleeing other Christians to create a secular government free from religious oppression.
It's an inconvenient truth. They know this to be historical truths, and so what they have to do is change the historical record, and they cannot do that in the face of what they have labeled to be critical race theory, because we know critical race theory isn't a catch-all phrase to represent everything that America has done wrong, but that's how Republicans use it. That said, well, yeah, America does have a history of racism, white supremacy, Jim Crow, and slavery. And there are vestiges of it still being felt by Black peoples to this day. And there's structural, systemic level issues that need to be addressed. And Republicans know it's simply about power. If we actually concede to the fact that there are systemic issues, then we actually have to give up some of our power. So Kelly McEnany, whatever her name is, she's playing that role. She's facilitating that role and getting paid well to do so.
You know, it's quite ironic when you really consider the fact that we actually have more to gain by unifying as common folk in the United States of America, rather than subscribing to these false ideologies that are perpetrated by those who are in power, especially those who are in political power. Because the reality is the Constitution was not written for regular people. In order to participate in democracy, not only did you have to be white, you had to be wealthy. You had to be white and own land. If you were not white and a nobleman or white and landowner, you could not participate in the democracy that they designed. So while we can debate on what's happening today because of the expression of racism and bigotry and systemic oppression, there is no debate as to who you were considered to be when this country was founded. And if it is in the document of the creation of this country, that means that the systemic oppression has permeated beyond the founders of the Constitution, and we have to remedy that. And that's part of what critical race theory teaches, is that the issue of bias is also codified in our systems, our laws, and our institutions. Yeah. So we'll see what happens if they will issue some kind of, hey, you know, she got it wrong, we apologize. Or perhaps she makes a statement on Twitter, hey guys, I was wrong about this. Yes, they did actually have slave owners. We'll see if something like that happens. But I would not hold my breath, because nobody cares on her side if she's telling the truth or not. Nobody.
That's the thing. I wanted to leave it where you left it, because that was that period. What you said closed it out, but they don't care how much they lie, Doc. They relish, they revel, they dwell in their half-truths and their propaganda and their lies. They need it as much as the rest of us need water. They need their lies.
But see, it's going now from half-truth and half-lie to whole lie and no truth. That's where it's going. There was a time, Ben, when the conspiracy theorists represented the very far right. And they existed on the fringes of the political movement inside of the conservative party. Now they coexist as a mainstream and mainstay political movement. And what's happening now is that they are controlling the complete narrative with their complete dishonesty. Rather than mixing the truth and lies, they are now mixing lies and getting away with it.
Absolutely. And I'm fascinated though, Dr. Ritchie, how many lies are they gonna have to tell to maintain their power? Because that's the game that we're playing right now. I mean, everything from the filibuster down to qualified immunity, all of these are different layers of lies that have to be told to maintain the system of white supremacy in this country.
Well, it's endless as long as it continues to be a means of power. We got more on the other side. Stick and stay, it's indisputable.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in there.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries.
Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. Yeah. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio. Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries, because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There's only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he was the original Bernie Sanders. If you wanna know how we're gonna win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country, so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let's go to some of these viewer comments. Make sure you are tuning in on the YouTube channel, Indisputable TYT. Indisputable TYT. Follow us on social media, Twitter and IG at Indisputable TYT. Make sure you subscribe to that YouTube channel, okay? It's free, it's easy, it's very quick. Let's get it. TYT member Electric Miscellaneous says, there isn't a right in the GOP anymore, at least in terms of national politics. It's all far right. A very large majority of the GOP either actively supported overturning an election and a violent insurrection, or remained silent and complicit while their colleagues did so. That's absolutely correct. Cognitive dissonance is a hell of a drug, says 1619, slavery brought to the US. 1776, US becomes own nation. 1863, enslaved blacks were freed, sort of. Note the priorities there. Good point. YouTube, super chat, Nicole Smith, thank you. If it had been Antifa, Trump would have had the National Guard there before the outer barrier was breached. Keep up the good work, Doc. Good point, thank you for that. Marco Antonio says, I preemptively felt sorry for whoever is facing Dr. Richard today in the bullpen. That's funny. Thank you. Shamira Hill says, hi, just found you and I love your show. Thank you for the truth, knowledge, and insight. You're amazing. Well, thank you for that, and I think you're amazing too. Pedal Pink says, right-wing extremists posing as anti-fascists cause the violence. They're organized. That is correct. Twitch, my Twitch folks, Red Lock Dragon, the ultimate projectionist. They were claiming over and over the Antifa was dressed like Trump supporters on January 6th when it was the other way around. Of course. Genocide 2002, they weren't called framers of the Constitution for nothing. LOL. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free. Back off! I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
This is currently making the rounds on Reddit. Nothing says I'm a male Karen like some loped out shades and sandals from the Gap. This white male Karen is upset because there's a crew working. This crew happens to be Mexican. And he's really, really mad that they have the audacity to make noise while they are in fact working. And he threatens them basically. He seems as if he wants to fight at least one of the crewmen based on his own actions. So here's your anti-Mexican, anti-work male Karen.
Service to come out here? Okay, show me your IDs, show me your IDs. I am the frickin' person living behind listening to this atrocious noise coming into my house. Yeah, you're screwed up. Okay, immigration, yeah. Okay, you moved that tile saw inside the house. No. Hey, chip it. What are you doing? Chip it. You're gonna have the immigration service out here.
Show your ID. Who in the hell? How do you just walk up to a work crew in your Gap sandals and start demanding people to show you their ID? They are working. Now, this would be a very simple dispute if you did not bring in the whole immigration thing, and obviously he has some issues there. But I find it quite fascinating that he's not the only one who lives in that area, but he's the only one who decided to try to get rowdy with this work crew. But it was in what he said. You see, he believes truly, and I know we call them male Karens on this show. You may call them Chads or Kens or whatever, it's okay. All of it fits. But the philosophy behind believing that you, a person of no authority, a person who has not witnessed any criminal activity whatsoever, to demand that people at their jobs give you their ID. I guarantee you wouldn't walk up to an all-white work crew and demand that. Promise you that. Ben, your thoughts?
I'm thinking of James Baldwin, and I always think about him in this kind of scenario when he talked about the Western Union lady. He was at the Cambridge debate with William F. Buckley, and he talked about the Western Union white woman who, at the end of the day, even though he had far more money than she would ever see, she still had this attitude and disposition towards him because she was white and he was black. I look at this scenario and see that this man actually believed that he had the authority and the right to insert himself into these people working and in order to demand what he felt like he should have. That is a sense of entitlement that is indicative of this nation. I mean, isn't it par for the course? I mean, every step of the way, this is what you get in this country.
Yeah, and it's very important to continue to highlight moments like this where simple arguments or simple disagreements, when they turn into a racial dynamic especially, and you see the overreaction of an individual who thinks that they are supposed to be able to control a process that no one has given them authority to control, it's important to highlight it. And let me tell you why that's important. Media is a powerful tool to shape social understanding. And what we do on this program is we want to wake people up to the social understanding that they, in fact, do not own another human being. That is gone. That is over with. That does not happen in the United States of America, or at least it should not happen in the United States of America. And every time I see one of these incidents, and I'm thankful, yes, that we have video footage, but I want to know how many times this happened for decades. Nobody had a video camera. Nobody had a camera phone. All people could do was tell the narrative. All they could do was say this happened. I remember years ago being, before the camera phone was in high usage, in our communities, in the Black community, we talked extensively about being targeted by the police, about police officers harassing and violating our constitutional rights. I've had that happen to me before. So Absolutely. We know it happened, but we did not have the video evidence back then to prove it.
Absolutely. Rodney King was one of the first times we got video footage of what we've clearly known in the Black community for a long time. But I'm harkening back to that old clip. That old clip of Sanford and Son where Red Fox was talking to his son, and his son Lamont was telling him, the leading cause of death for Black men is heart disease. And Fred Sanford was like, I thought it was always the cops. We've been dealing with this for a long time.
Yeah, a very long time, and it is important to continue to highlight these incidents, and we will do so. So obviously, that work crew continued their job after they were able to record this man, and I firmly believe the reason why he did not try to attack somebody, but acted like he was going to attack somebody, is because he saw that phone and that video going. Yeah. It has become a protection for many people. Okay, one of the saddest stories I've seen in a very long time. Okay, a Black student took his own life because people at a hospital did not give a damn about him. 21-year-old college athlete Samuel Uko went to the hospital in the middle of a mental health crisis. So he's 20, he's an athlete. He goes to the right place in the middle of a mental health crisis. But instead of receiving care, he was shown the door and later found dead in a lake. A security video shows him pleading for help and being removed by force by the security at this hospital. Let's go to the first video.
No, leave me alone. I said I know because I have mental issues. No, please help.
That's him being thrown out of the hospital. He was there because he needed attention, he needed care for his mental health issue at that time. They threw him out of the hospital. You saw how many security guards threw him out of that hospital? And he's yelling, leave me alone. What he's really saying is, you're not the people I'm here to see. I need help. I need help. But instead of help, in this Canadian hospital, they threw him outside, okay? That's the first part. Last spring, Samuel Uko posted a Snapchat video begging his friends for help. He was in the lobby of a hospital in Regina, in Canada, just a few hours north of the Montana line. He said, and I quote, "I need help, bro. I need help, bro, for real," Uko said into his camera at some point in the video. A hospital staffer behind him stands behind him and demands to know, why are you taking a picture? the CBC obtained the court documents from a lawsuit brought against the Saskatchewan, thank you, Saskatchewan Health Authority, the SHA, for failing to provide care to Uko. His family was awarded $81,000 for his life. Let me say that again. His family was awarded $81,000 for killing him. The SHA apologized to the family, admitting the hospital, and I quote, failed to provide the timely assistance he needed. That's him. That's the young man, athletic, a student, went to the right place, recognized he was having a mental health disorder, cried out to his friends via social media, but also went to the right place where he's supposed to receive help. And instead of receiving help, he received a death sentence by that hospital. And then his family, after he's dead, they receive $81,000 for his death. Injustice on top of injustice. Ben, what are your thoughts?
This story is so tragic. And I saw as you were struggling with it, Dr. Richie, because it is a heavy story to cover. This brother seeking and pleading, begging, audibly wailing for help. And instead of getting help, he was thrown out. And then now he's dead. And it just reminds me of how Black people are perceived in the health system, and how they don't see our pain as a normal pain. Like we could take more. The actual studies that show that this is the perception that doctors have of black people, not categorically, but I think one instance is too much. And we've seen this time and again, especially with Black women, the treatment that they need in hospitals is oftentimes what they don't receive. And because they don't receive it, they lose their lives.
You make a very compelling point that I can echo by way of research. Obviously, this young man wanted help, needed help, sought help in the right place, by the way, not the wrong place, but it was the wrong place in that moment. Now, we don't know if he was denied because he was Black. I assume so. I assume it has something to do with it, but he gets kicked out of a hospital. He then commits suicide. He was at the hospital for suicidal thoughts, and this is how they treated him. The hospital admits to wrongdoing, and then they pay off the family $81,000 for his life. What a tragedy. But here's the reality of the science. Morehouse School of Medicine and others have promoted the data that says if you have a white doctor, this is statistical data that is available right now. If you have a white doctor and happen to be a Black person, you have a lower chance of living. That's me summarizing the data. That same study showed if you are a Black person with a Black doctor, you have a higher chance of living more years. Now, it takes a few doctors to contextualize that data, but it basically means that Black doctors tend to listen to their patients more than white doctors with Black patients. And you see the real disparity in the actual treatment, the remedy, and the medical diagnosis as it relates to Black people who are under medical care. That study is available today. And Dr. Oz, who I don't agree with much, Dr. Oz even talked about that study on his show. So this is something that has to continue to be highlighted because obviously it leads to the death of young Black men too, because as you said, Ben, much research shows that people just automatically assume Black folks can just take more and do not need the assistance they say they need in the realm of healthcare.
Yeah, it's so tragic, and we lose people. These are real lives, and $81,000 is just nothing for a human life.
Exactly, man. Yeah. Okay. We got more. Indisputable. Stick and stay.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you or that you were
that it was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
All right, welcome to Dr. Rashad Richard Indisputable. This is going to be quite interesting. I don't know if you can handle this much truth on any day of the week. The unrest inside of the black community and communities that support them. It's because these cops are not held accountable. You have a family calling 911, and that family is expecting help, not expecting their loved one to be killed by the very people they pay to protect and serve them. Did you ever notice a cop that you worked with call any black person the N-word or target people because they were black? Nope. But we disagree that somehow police officers are not also subject to the same systemic biases and racism as any other level of law enforcement.
It sounds like for everybody's need who wants to crucify the cops without looking at it.
No, crucify bad cops, brother.
Of
bad
course.
cops.
We don't need the government to step into our lives mandating that we should be wearing a mask.
You think you putting on a mask, Trey, is government intrusion, but you don't think the government telling a woman what she can or cannot do with her body it isn't government intrusion.
Where does life begin?
You want to go there? I can read it to you, brother.
You seem very well prepared. Certainly more.
Of course, why would I not be well prepared? They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform throughout this country, so I won't stop, and you won't stop either.
I've been a fan of TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watched the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day in high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring them. There's nobody there to say, you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let's go to some of these viewer comments. We got a lot of them. I will read as many as I can. TYT member Jam says, man, throwing a person out of a hospital while they're crying for help, Hippocratic oath my ass. YouTube super chat, Anthony Phillips says, I am a psychiatric nurse. I know from experience that mental health crises are both feared and misunderstood in the ER. Sadly, this is a norm today. Wow. About the founding fathers. Omega Shinron Dragon says, Kelly McEnema, that's awesome, is a problem inflicted on us by CNN and the other problem may be Trump. Remember that they gave them their platforms before being in government. Interesting point. Moon Dragon says denial of reality is the Republican norm. Yep. Sunkissed and Favorite says Kevin is sometimes worse than Karen. About the black student, Mbali Shali, MT Shali. I get it right one day. Dr. Richard makes me shut up and listen. There is no end to the education one gets watching this show. Well, bless you. Thank you so much for that. Phyllis Master says, I have been in his shoes. Hospitals treat mental health emergencies as if you are just drug seeking. Very sad. Twitch. Very, very, very good point, says Peachy Shari. The conversation has changed because we catch this on camera. Yep. Hashtag man Karen, Mr. Ryder. Thank you. Octo Squiddies, entitlement is a hell of a drug. Yeah. Auntie Faye, this is sickening. And not the first time radicalized people have been victimized by our healthcare system in Canada. Very sad. That young man should be alive today. Okay, another not great story. It's a sad story, but it deserves our attention. There's a black woman, partially blind. She's blind in one eye. She claims she was tased, stripped by force. She's disabled. Let's be very clear. This is a disabled black woman. This is out of Illinois. She is now fighting back against the McDonough County Sheriff's Office and the local police department after claiming she was subjected to false accusations and a non-consensual strip search during a DUI arrest. A DUI arrest. A video from the McDonough County Jail was released online that showed an incident of her being tasered and strip searched. Viewer discretion is advised on this one, okay? But I want you to see this and I will give you some more background. They later stripped her completely naked. They used a taser on her. She was unarmed and inside of an enclosed facility. The reason why she's crying like that and yelling for dear life is because they're not just stripping her clothes, they are stripping her dignity. So let me give you some background to this story. Harrison was pulled over by an officer in the Macomb Police Department who separately claimed they were responding to a call about reckless driving. Harris, who was blind in her left eye, said she became confused after she noticed a police car was trailing her. Harrison pulled the car over to the side of the road after realizing police were instructing her to stop. Because of her discombobulation, Harrison was not able to relay that the passenger side window could not roll down and unlocked her door, which caused tensions to explode. Harrison said officers poured her door open while yelling different commands. To her surprise, Harrison was handcuffed without being told why she was pulled over, never underwent a breathalyzer or sobriety test. However, the state law allows officers to arrest on probable cause if they believe a driver is under the influence. She never got tested for alcohol. Never, not one time. But their state law allows for this to happen without the breathalyzer or a field sobriety test. Harrison told the outlet that prior to the confrontation, she dropped off her kids at the YMCA and picked up a stranger who was caught in the rain and needed a ride. Harris, once again, blind in her left eye, said she became confused after she noticed the police car was trailing her. Harrison pulled the car over to the side of the road after realizing the police were instructing her to stop. Now, here's the thing. She's 31 years of age. She faces 5 to 7 years in prison for 4 charges: aggravated battery, driving under the influence without proof, resisting a peace officer, and improper lane usage. Harrison has also now lost custody of her 3 children. Harrison opted for a bench trial, meaning a trial by judge, and was found guilty by this judge on all charges. She is facing her sentencing hearing on August 10th. Now, this is why it's important we talk about this story, and at Indisputable, we will follow this story. You have no proof whatsoever that this woman was driving under the influence. Obviously, this woman was extremely distraught over what just took place. She does a trial by judge. Typically, when a person does a trial by judge, they're doing that because they really believe in their innocence, and they believe that a judge, being a trained lawyer, being a jurist, will be able to decipher what the law says and what actually happened. But in this case, the judge says she's guilty of everything, and now she's facing years in prison, and all she was doing was driving in the rain that day. Ben, your thoughts?
That video was extremely difficult to watch, to listen, and I don't know where. No, I do know. Let me correct myself. I was gonna say where this lack of empathy comes towards black people, but it's rooted in this American system. You cannot see a person as a human being and treat them the way that woman was treated in that video. To all the case that you laid out in terms of the breathalyzer and the inability, they don't have evidence of it. None of that stopped them, Dr. Richie.
No.
Did you notice how none of that stopped them from treating her like she was less than human?
Yeah, and this woman's life has been turned upside down. We have no evidence of her being an irresponsible individual. She was a good mother, is a good mother. Her children have been taken away from her because of this. We have a saying in the legal circle called home cooked. And that's when all of the good old boy system rallies around one issue and you're not part of it. And it seems like she has been home cooked by the locals in that judiciary or justice system. And it's quite unfortunate, but we are going to follow this and we are going to make some noise because definitely I think this is one of those cases ripe for appeal. All right, shifting gears. Senator Ron Johnson, he lied. I know that does not come as a shock to anybody, but it's interesting to note how these politicians get away with saying one thing to one crowd and something totally different to another crowd. And the people who are supposed to be part of his crowd will never call him out on it or hold him accountable to what the truth actually is. So Senator Ron Johnson has repeatedly gone on record and said that he is not a climate denier, okay? So him being one of the Republicans who would try to, hold the middle line on this one, decided to just go all the way on the other side based on a comment he made in June, early June, to the Republican women of Greater Wisconsin. This is a luncheon that he was at. CNN's K-File uncovered the video of the Wisconsin Republican telling the laughing audience that he actually believes that the climate crisis is bullshit. That's what he believes. Now he told them this. Remember, this is the same guy who said, "Oh, no. I'm not that guy. I am not a climate denier." But he told these women, "Oh, that's a bunch of bull." Okay? He's not even talking code anymore. He just straight out said it. So let's get it. Take you to the video.
The target tonight, Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson. To CNN and his local paper, he says stuff like, "My statements are consistent. I'm not a climate change denier." Then our K-File team finds this when he's back home at a Republican women's lunch, you know, when you speak the truth.
I don't know about you guys, but I think climate change is, as Lord Monkton said, okay? And by the way, it is.
Well, that's what the man said. That's what he believes. And he said that with actual conviction. He didn't do the Ron Johnson Senate thing where I believe that climate crisis is real. He didn't do that. He didn't say it like that. He said it with actual heart. He believes it's bull, okay? This is quite interesting because obviously this has now become a big political issue where it should just be a science issue, but it's not. We have another video. Okay. My brother, I know it comes as no shock that Ron Johnson lied or a politician lied. But to be so extreme on both sides of one argument is quite telling of your political value system.
Yeah, I think everyone should look really clearly at the fact that Republicans are so open with their hypocrisy as it pertains to this environment and climate change. Ron Johnson has no problem knowing the truth about the climate situation, as well as lying to his constituents to rally them up and to rev them up. I'm just fascinated at they would really see this country, this planet destroyed for the sake of power and have no compunction about it. And so they are very dangerous. I think this is just one clip in a long series of evidence of why they have to be removed from power.
Yeah, and obviously this was not his first time being free with his actual belief around other Republicans. So here's what you're really seeing. You're seeing a politician who says one thing for the cameras and another thing for his crew. And when you have that, you have an individual who will vote based on what he tells his crew, not based on what he tells the camera. And then he will use any type of pretext and context to justify his ridiculous voting record because all along it was connected to the heart of his base. And those are the people you saw at that luncheon who giggled and laughed, and they're laughing away the future of their own children, the future of their grandchildren. You're laughing that away when you don't take climate change seriously.
Absolutely. I wonder what they're gonna do. Well, I think they're counting on the fact that they won't be here. And so they are not concerned with the condition of this planet for their grandchildren.
They don't have to explain themselves at all. All right, before we go, man, just something I was thinking about being kind of on topic, but not. Do you remember the cartoon Captain Planet?
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember, okay, Captain Planet was a dope ass cartoon.
Yeah.
Captain Planet as a cartoon could not exist today. Just think about that.
Wow.
Think about if they tried to put Captain Planet back on the show, back on any network today as a show. It could not exist today. You would have members of the Republican Party saying it's brainwashing and indoctrinating children. You would have those on the right and the far right saying that this is something that networks should be against. You would have all of that happening right now. So it shows you how much we have de-evolved in a way.
Absolutely, I've got nothing to add to that, Dr. Richie. That is absolutely right.
Yeah, My brother, always a pleasure to have your insights on Indisputable. Tell people how they can check out your show, the Benjamin Dixon Show, and how can they follow you on social media?
They can find me on Twitter at Benjamin P. Dixon, or they can watch us, and they could watch us every single morning for the Benjamin Dixon Show starting at 8 a.m. right here on YouTube.
Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate your time as always.
Pleasure.
All right, we got more on the other side. The bullpen is next. Stick and stay.
I'll predict right here for you, Chris. I think Donald Trump will leave office before his term is up. He'll be humiliated, embarrassed, and I know him. He's not going to want to lose, and he's going to run for the hills.
You got that bet all day long.
Okay, let's get after it. Now, so look, Jake has made some good predictions, and this is in good fun. I could not disagree more.
There's a little bromance between the two of them. You got that bet all day long, Janky, you. Oh, you stop. In the meantime, let's call him out on the damage.
No, but
I just got a Roku set. Did basically a little bit of channel surfing, and I was like, there we are.
Yeah.
There we are. And then I turned it on, and it was John and Brett on Damage Report making fun of me.
Oh no.
So you are so busted. I even took a picture of it, okay? They're talking about my predictions. I got a new prediction for you, John Iadarola.
You're doing a show that's blowing the doors off everybody.
Young Turks is the largest online news network, not a big deal. We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities. We're so sick of this corruption. We're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care. Fourth day on Occupy Wall Street. Last night we launched Wolfpack. It's us pushing our ideas out there, trying to help the country in every way that we can, trying to make this place just a little bit better. Reporting from the Hillary-Bernie debate, I gotta be honest, you know what we do, we cover it for real. For us, this system isn't working. Free and fair elections. And when he told the cops that day when they came to drag her away, and he said, if you're gonna chain her, you're gonna chain me. If you're gonna arrest her, you're gonna arrest me.
I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
Okay.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let me go to some of these comments and then we'll get to our next segment. And thank you all for opining, okay? Let's go to TYT member Electric Miscellaneous says, what the police officers did to that woman was torture. It was intentional. It was unnecessary. They used violence to degrade her just because they could. She should not be going to jail, be the one going to jail. Those cops are a danger to society and should be the ones in court facing jail time. Agreed. I'm a damn liberal. I'm a damn lib. I got it. Okay. I have to turn the sound off. It's killing my soul. Yeah, it is graphic. That's why I made sure we did that warning, that content warning in the beginning. But it is also necessary. It's necessary that you feel moments like that. Let's go to our YouTube super chat. Tatted Reaper says, contact Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. He is a very compassionate man and a Democrat. He should get involved with Ms. Harrison's appeal. We're on top of it, all right? King T says, you said it, Doc. Great job, Ben. Agreed on both, thank you. Twitch, you can call me Jess. I am so incredibly embarrassed by Ron Johnson. He is a senator from my area and I sincerely apologize to America for this trash. Well, damn. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, we have John Burnett. John Burnett is a Republican strategist and financial industry professional with over 20 years of experience in risk management. He's also an adjunct professor at Hampton University and New York University. He has a long, extensive resume. Check out his bio when you get a moment. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, John, listen. Before the show, you said somebody told you this was going to be painful. You're a smart guy. I don't think this is going to be painful for you, brother. So let's get into it. Part of what we're going to discuss today, the reality of voting rights in the United States of America. So let me give a little bit of context for the discussion. Obviously, everyone is well aware that we've had more voter laws passed during the last state legislative cycle than in the history of us dealing with voting laws. And it all came from one particular platform. It came from the idea that the election was rigged and the election was stolen from Donald Trump. So I have to first ask you, and I don't want to presume what you believe about that. So I'm going to ask you, do you believe the election was in fact stolen from Donald J. Trump?
I believe that there are some fundamental flaws in our electoral process that needs to be addressed. I think whether you're a Democrat or Republican or in the middle or politically agnostic, you can actually agree that many people are left on voter rolls who are either dead or moved out of state. And it was especially problematic when you had states mail out ballots statewide with I don't want to say a corrupt, because that would be unfair, inaccurate voter rolls. So I think that this is an opportunity for us to make sure that we reinstill trust in our electoral process by making sure that not only are our voter rolls clean, but we have other controls in place. And I mean controls in a good sense, to make sure that, you know what, the efficacy, the reliability, and other things are where it should be, so that way it gains trust of the electorate. I'm from New York, as you could tell, even in the primary, Democratic primary, 135 or 120, at least 125,000 test ballots or part of the original vote count, right? So there are so many different issues going on in different municipalities. We just got to clean up our act across the board.
Man, that was a very professorial answer. So let me once again ask you, because you did not answer the exact question, but I do agree with you that voting irregularities do happen. But Democrats have been claiming these irregularities must be challenged and transformed. So we have been saying that, but this is something a little different, brother. This is something that is so extreme to say that state governments, the judiciary, as well as left-leaning media conspired against one man, being Donald Trump, and literally stole an entire election. Now, I get what you said, and I agree with 90% of what you said, but I do want you to directly answer, do you believe the election was in fact stolen from Donald Trump?
I'll say there are many parts of this election that came down to specific swing states where the irregularities provided an environment of unfairness. That's the best you're gonna get out of me.
Man, you're not gonna answer the damn question. All right, okay. So let me move on to the next topic. Not next topic, but next question. There are some laws that were passed because of this big lie. I consider it to be a big lie. Any irregularity that was noted was not statistically significant enough to overturn the election. I know that a lot of emphasis was placed on Georgia. That was done so by Trump himself and also his former attorney, Rudy Giuliani. But even if they won Georgia, let's talk in a hypothetical place in La La Land. Even if he won Georgia, he still loses the electoral college vote and he loses the popular vote. Even if he won some of these other states in question, he still loses the election. And I don't think people are thinking about it mathematically when they say, well, this state had this problem and this state had that problem. But when you combine both of those states, he still loses. He still does not get the constitutional mandate to govern. He still loses the electoral college vote.
Well, when you take, let's say 3 states in particular, right? Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. Arizona's still going through their recount. And I'm hearing that there's some positive elements coming out of that in terms of the voter irregularities.
What's going to happen, Professor?
But also, you're a lawyer as well, right?
No, I'm not. I'm in law school.
You're in law school.
I'm in law school. Yes.
But you have that you have that lawyer look to you, right?
I'm working on
it. That right balance, no pun intended. However, you know or should know in your first year of law school that the state officials cannot unilaterally change election law. That needs to come down to the state legislatures, right?
Now wait a minute. When you say, do you mean federal officials or are you talking about state
like governor or state attorney or any other state official? That one person or a collective of 2 or 3 of them cannot unilaterally change election law. That was against the law to begin with, right?
No, that's not true. Let me give some pushback to that. That's not true.
Okay.
Pre-clearance, which was a Supreme Court ruling that said particular states that have a history of violating the constitutional voting rights of particular demographics must go through a clearance process with the Department of Justice in order to change the election in their local state. You are familiar with the Supreme Court saying we're going to now set that aside as a ruling, and the United States Congress will have to now jump in and change the statute.
But when was that? When was that passed? When was that stated?
This was just a few years ago, brother. The Voting Rights Act was set aside. Which was codified through a Supreme Court ruling that said, listen, for these particular states, they must go through a Department of Justice clearance process in order to change their election rules. That's what that said. So the Supreme Court set that aside and said now the United States Congress will have to simply make a law if they want these states to be protected. And it was so interesting because the logic of the Supreme Court when they did that was that it was no longer necessary, that elections were basically fair, that elections were freely accessible to all people, that these discriminatory practices no longer were taking place, and it was not an issue of judicial remedy anymore. And they decided to step out of judicial remedy.
Let's talk details. We're both professors, so let's act like this is an exam, right? Not some abstract conversation. What specific actions in fine details were found to violate individual voting rights.
So let me go down the list.
People never talk in specifics.
But I do. So let me give you some specifics. Let me go to Senate Bill 202. That is a state Senate bill out of the state of Georgia. Now, the first thing I want to correct you on, Professor, is that state governments, they do have the ability to dictate the processes of how and when a person votes. They can change the time from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. if they choose. They can do weekend voting or weekday voting if they choose. They can employ early voting or absentee voting if they choose. They can have locations for people to vote.
That is not every state.
Sir, unless, Professor, unless the Constitution of that state specifically prohibits it. That is the only caveat to what I just said. The state of Georgia did not.
In Pennsylvania, it has to go through the state legislature.
So let's talk about Georgia, and then we'll go to Pennsylvania. Okay. In the state of Georgia, you have a state Senate bill called Senate Bill 202. In that state Senate bill, it did a few things. One, it made it against the law, made it an actual misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in prison, if you handed somebody water or a snack while waiting in line to vote. Now, that even received criticism from Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham said, I don't know why they put that in the bill. That came from a Republican, but they put it in the bill for a very specific reason. Churches and nonprofit organizations, they were running commercials, nonpartisan by the way. They were running commercials saying, hey, if you have to stand in these long lines, which by the way, all of the long lines in Georgia are in black neighborhoods, 100%, virtually no exception. So they said in order to make sure people know that they will be hydrated, that they will have opportunity for snacks, we're going to run advertisements telling people, listen, if you come to the precinct, we're gonna make sure that you have water, you have Gatorade, you have snacks. That's all they did. And that did make more people feel comfortable about going out and standing in a long line in order to participate in the election. So they made.
It sounded like you had more than water. It sounded like you drank Kool-Aid. So let me ask you.
Wait a minute. That was almost funny, Professor. So go ahead and speak on that law. Speak on that provision. Does that make sense to you?
So I'm not a lawyer. I'm a businessman, right? So let me tell you exactly how it goes down in New York.
But brother, talk about the bill because you asked me about a specific. I just gave you one specific. I got a bunch of them.
I'm drawing a parallel.
Okay.
Right, in a democratic state. Right? So there are certain laws in New York where you cannot campaign, where within a certain distance of the polling station. Meaning that you can't pass out water, you can't pass out anything.
That's not what the New York Code says.
As a candidate,
that is not what
as a PAC,
sir,
or in anything political, you cannot do that. Why? Because if an individual accepts something from you, whether it's a piece of literature or otherwise, then that person might feel obligated to consider your candidate, right? Or whichever party or position you're lobbying or stand for. So to remove all of that confusion and so-called pressure, you cannot do certain activities within certain distance of the polling station.
So let me break it down.
Blue state.
Okay, brother. Let me break down where you're wrong at. Give me an opportunity to respond to that. You're conflating two things that do not actually exist together. It is correct that campaigning within the statutory limits of a polling precinct is against the law. It's against the law in New York. It has always been against the law in Georgia. It's against the law in every single state in the United States of America. That law has been established for decades, brother. We're not talking about that law. You're conflating a new law which says you don't have to be campaigning. You do not have to be engaged in electioneering. Simply bringing somebody water as a nonpartisan, non-political organization is now an actual crime based on that sentence.
Have you ever run for office?
Hell no, brother.
let's say I was running for office, right?
Okay.
We all know, right? We all know people skirt the rules.
Oh, come on, man. You can't justify a bad law. This is a bad law, brother. Come on, you're a businessman. It's a bad law.
So if I wanted to skirt the law, what I would do is take those water bottles, take my beautiful smile, right? My campaign picture, right? And relabel the water bottles.
But that's against the law.
And pass those out.
But Professor, that's against the law, Professor.
Why can't you pass out water? Right?
Because if you're using it, let me explain. You asked a question.
To combine those two things together,
sir,
in terms of passing out.
It's a dumbass law, and you know it, brother.
So forth, within a certain distance.
Okay. All right. We're going to go to the next point. Bottom line, it's a dumbass law. It criminalizes individuals who are not engaging in electioneering whatsoever. And it was only set forth in order to penalize those that motivated a particular group of people in a particular demographic to the polls.
Fair, free election is not engaging in undue influence.
All right, brother. All right, we're going to disagree on the water being illegal in a voting line when it was never illegal before the Senate Bill 202 in the state of Georgia. Let me ask you about this entire push from Republicans, mainly conservatives, who are saying that the United States Congress, and I'm specifically talking about acts like the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, right? HR 1, dealing with how we unify or create a uniform code in our election processes. There are people who say that Congress does not have the constitutional authority to dictate to states how to actually run elections. What do you say to that?
Let's talk about the details of the bill, right? Not this high level element, but I'll answer your question because I don't want your viewers to say, this guy doesn't like to answer questions and he's a professor. Let's say his students don't want to answer questions, right? That would be unfair. So I think I believe in federalism. I think it should be left up to the states, right? I don't think the government should do overreach by dictating how states should govern their elections, right? That's number one.
Do you think it's unconstitutional?
According to the way the Constitution is written and what I've heard and what I observed, I think it's an overreach by the federal government.
Let me explain something to you. Okay, I'm gonna let you respond. So you think it's overreach by the federal government. I respect your opinion, but your opinion is not rooted in fact, Professor. The truth is, the federal government does have the constitutional authority to deal with election laws. Let me read something to you. This is from the US Constitution. Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1. Here's what it says verbatim. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. That's your state law. That's your state constitutional mandate, that states have the authority to do this. And then it says, semicolon, but. And that's the part that no one wants to read on the right. It says, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. That's in the Constitution, brother. That's in the US Constitution. So the Constitution literally is contradicting what those on the right are saying is unconstitutional. It is very constitutional for the US Congress to be involved in changing election laws in the United States of America.
So in terms of time and place, right? So we have to look at what the words actually mean, add context to that. When you look at the federal law, is it saying that now it should be legal for ballot harvesting, to do mail-in voting and all these other things that are governed?
You don't think mail-in voting is legal? You don't think mail-in voting is legal?
And executing, I'm take my comments in totality, sir.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that those words after the colon or semicolon, I forgot which one you said, That doesn't mean that the federal government can come in and completely take over and dictate every aspect of the electoral process. That would be false and misleading, sir.
Okay, that's interesting. So let me ask you this question. Do you believe?
Can I interject another parallel, right? Because parallel provides understanding.
Okay.
Many people on the left are quick to misquote and misunderstand certain things in the Constitution.
Like you just
did. To try to prove their own point. But when it comes to free speech, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, they don't want to follow those words.
Okay, brother, you're kind of going all over the place. So it was actually you who misrepresented the Constitution by saying that this was basically an overreach of the federal government when the Constitution says it is not an overreach. It's actually part of the constitutional platform.
The federal government.
Okay.
Absolute authority over.
All right, brother. That's not what I said. That's not what I said on this show. But I made it very clear that anyone who says the federal government or the United States Congress cannot get involved in changing election law is absolutely wrong based on the Constitution. And I read to you where it's at in the Constitution. I source my data, I source my information on the show.
And what I said to you and to your viewers, sir, that the bill that you had mentioned, all the items in the bill, that's why I want to talk specifics.
So what items in the bill do you not like?
The bill itself is an overreach.
Okay, brother, just tell me what part of the bill you do not like. Okay, let's talk about some that you actually gave.
Like ballot harvesting.
All right, and you also said
mandating ballot harvesting is an overreach by the federal government.
All right, brother, I have a limited amount of time. You also talked about mail-in voting, which is really ironic to me that somehow that has become a great evil or prohibition. Number one, the vast majority of state legislatures that approved mail-in voting were Republican-led legislatures who approved mail-in voting 10, 15 years ago. As a matter of fact, the president of the United States has always voted by way of mail-in voting, absentee voting. And now all of a sudden we're saying that that is illegal. That means that everybody who participated in this democracy before these new laws came into being, or new proposals came into being, voted illegally. Is that what you're saying?
Just so that you're
including the president.
Just so your viewers are not misled, right? In terms of absentee voter or other extreme circumstances, that has always been permitted by mail, but not mail-in balloting to replace going to the polls. See, it's very important that we get this right and share the right understanding that mail-in balloting, you say that was passed 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Most people never even heard of mail-in balloting being part of the regular electoral process because it is not. For absentee balloting and other extreme circumstances, not for the norm. So
you're saying, let me get this right.
And we get the right understanding.
Okay, so let me make sure I clarify what you're saying. You're saying that absentee voting or mail-in voting should be permissible under select circumstances and not permissible as a formation of normative democracy.
Whatever, right? Because our infrastructure is not set up for that. We talked about irregularities from the very beginning.
Who gets to make that decision?
Dead people on voter rolls, people that move to different states, and
Professor, who makes the decision?
Ballots.
I got you, brother. Listen, I got like 2 minutes left. Who, in your opinion, makes the decision as to what selected group should be able to absentee vote? Who?
I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think we could agree on what I'm about to say. Let's put it to the electorate. What do you want? And let's pass it state by state and not allow either just the governor or state attorney general or an elected state body of officials decide for the voters. Let's put out a referendum in each state and see what the people want.
Yeah, I'm actually not against those referendums statewide. Those referendums have been significantly impactful and beneficial, especially in some southern states. For example, in the state of Georgia, there was a referendum put on the ballot during the last election that said, should we get rid of qualified immunity, basically? And the people in Georgia, still a Republican state, they said, yes, we need to get rid of qualified immunity for government workers, i.e. the police, right? And so in the state of Georgia, all right, hold on, we'll debate that next time. But the state of Georgia, now a Superior Court judge can actually lay aside qualified immunity in certain circumstances because of that ballot initiative. But Professor, I wanna have you back on the show. Let's talk about qualified immunity next time, all right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, man, I appreciate you being on Indisputable.
You got it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, remember these things. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.